past them both on the wet part of the racetrack.
Hello and welcome to the 28th season opener here for GPVWC Supercup here in Australia. And today we will be taking you through the double round with me, Kacper Kolodziejczyk, as your lead commentator, and with me, Thomas Hinss.
Hello everybody, welcome to the broadcast. Should be a, well, interesting night of racing to say the least. Looks like the weather has set in. We've got some rain out there on track. Drivers already having a bit of difficulty with the conditions. But, well, it's only going to make the qualifying and the racing even more spicy, Kacper.
I do feel so, and we already see people actually driving on slick tires. So it may come into play tactically as well. So it could be a very, very fascinating race. And it's not just a fascinating race, but a fascinating season that we're starting, since we have a few new things, including a new set of cars, don't we?
Yeah, of course, we have the custom Formula Challenge cars as we saw last night. Got the custom Super Cup cars as well. And obviously the new Super League cars as well to add on tomorrow night. So it's a whole new ball game in that regard. Everyone's having to scramble away to try and figure out how these cars work, get the setups ideal for each track, and the weather's only going to play an even bigger hand in this one. Formula Challenge last night was a dry affair, but looks like the weather has come in here for tonight's race in the, well, technically not the middle of summer, towards the end of summer here in Australia. Can't confirm being down here myself, but apparently the rain has decided to come regardless, and it's just going to make things even more interesting, especially as well with the way the scaling of the weather has been sort of tweaked as well to try and make it a bit more realistic with the drying track, so it's not like it has been in past races and seasons. So hopefully it's going to make the racing a bit more perhaps bearable for the drivers, but you know, we'll find out as this qualifying session goes on and we get the first laps in now.
I definitely agree, and I think that having a rainy or even more so changeable conditions for your first race in a completely new car, after some drivers would be used to the Formula Renault cars from previous few seasons already, I think that this is a very tough opening, but I think this could provide some very fascinating racing just due to the people not being used to these cars. And we could see some errors coming from drivers, hopefully not catastrophic though.
Yeah, well, it's the weather. You know, these kind of conditions always do really, you know, they really bring out the drivers of the field and those who can handle a bit of variation in the weather conditions. Daniel Brewer at the moment on provisional pole in the 34.4, but 8/10 clear of his rival Johan Lindberg. Was like that in practice as well. 26 cars, of course, here in the Super Cup full field here tonight for the first round. Obviously, probably seeing a few names familiar from the Super League as well. Lewis Redshaw is kind of the one that stands out for me, driving for Drake this season in Super Cup. Will be probably a bit more, I'm sure, revived in terms of commitment and enthusiasm as well, after obviously having a bit of a difficult time in the woods last year in Super League. Obviously, that car being a bit of a tricky one to get to grips with, but with the spec racing sort of aspect of Super Cup, it does bring a lot of the big names here as well. So the racing is always very tight in Super Cup, and really does sort of do a good promotion of the league as well. And you know, got a couple other big names here, like Yuri Gastorp is known for a lot of endurance stuff. Going to be really interesting to see how he handles this open wheeler formats. Probably not what he's really known most for, but we'll see if he can make that transition well. Mike Bell, of course, bearing the traps for a number of years, and a couple of the names in here who are big names. Laura Schroeter, of course, next Super League driver as well. So there's plenty of big names in this series, and I'm sure going to be strong their stuff this first round.
Yes, there are of course more like Antonio Hurlianovic, who also drives in endurance series, and we have Jared Batalla, who drove the entire season last year in Super League. There's just a plethora of absolutely fantastic drivers, and I think that this could provide absolutely fascinating racing, and hopefully clean racing as well. And to be fair, I think that these cars personally look really, really good, and they look a bit more up to date compared to their Formula Renaults, which have stopped racing this season in real life.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the Formula Renault is now a past technology officially. Unfortunately, the series has been shut down. I think the numbers were dwindling as well in recent years, so kind of the writing has been on the wall the last couple of years, and it was finally kind of put out of its misery this year. But I think it's these cars, as you say, I really do like the way they are. They really are like a mini F1 car. Got the little shark fin there as well, which I think suits them quite well. So again, kudos to obviously Chris Williamson and all the mod team on that. And obviously the testers getting the handling model quite nice. I haven't really done many laps in this car. I did go out and have a couple of just little cider laps during the week. And yeah, good fun little package to drive. Obviously sounds very nice too. I do like the sort of V8 sound poured over from the Formula Renault, and I think it fits it quite well. And really, makes a very, very nice package of a car. And certainly going to be interesting to see it tested in these changeable conditions. Always a good test of how a car is when they're having to be tested in these kind of areas, but we'll see how they go. At the moment, it is still Daniel Brewer on pole with that 34.4, a good nearly second clear of his next rival in Johan Lingberg. Jared Batella is in third. That's Roy Schroten in fourth, swiftly followed by fellow ex-Super League driver Lewis Redshaw. Bastian Pasela, is in P6. Mikael Tumala, another name who I haven't seen around for quite some time. He's an ex-Super League driver for Nijo, I believe, in 2015, I think 16 as well for part of it. And yeah, he's a name I've not seen for quite some time. Come back for Supercup. Good to see him up in the top 10 at the moment. Patrick Kraus is in P8, Jack Mayer P9 at the moment, and Ben Supanik, another ex-Super League driver from last year, driving for the now Supercup team. Green Stripes Racing, of course, was Super League last season, had a very difficult season, and have gone down to Supercup this year. So hopefully they can have a good run at the moment. They've got him in the top 10, which is good to see, or just got pipped just then out of the top 10, but looking pretty solid pace-wise in these conditions, and can hopefully give them a good start to the year. Because it'd be good to see Green Stripes back in a more competitive sense, Kacper.
Yes, it definitely is great to see them. They've been very much struggling last year, and I really do hope that in a series where, of course, development is not going to be a key factor, and maybe they can find more drivers willing to drive for them, or at least maybe slightly faster, or drivers who feel more comfortable in these cars. I do really hope that they do very well, and who knows, maybe at some point they'll be able to get back up to Super League and then show that they definitely are worth it. But for this season, they will be in Super Cup. And I think we wish them all the best. As I'm looking through the drivers, we have Bastian Peisler, who has actually crashed and has lost his front wing. And seemingly, Patrick Kraus was also involved in the incident. Both stopped on track and now making their way very slowly in a crawling car for Bastian. He has to make it half a lap based on a wet track, and I think on slick tires, which could have been the mistake that cost them a lot in the qualifying.
Yeah, and this is that awkward middle phase with the weather. You've got a pretty clear dry line there, and always generally the sign that you take on as a driver is when the spray isn't showing anymore on the dry line. That generally is the sign that slicks can work if you keep it on the dry stuff where the spray isn't coming off. So that's usually the sign as a driver that you make the switch. And it looks like most of the drivers are out there at the moment on the dry tyre. Of course, in qualifying, you're not trying to pass people, so it can work pretty well. In the race, of course, you got an entirely different scenario, having to go side by side with people. So you might see a bit more of a mixed bag for the first race itself. I reckon we could see some starting with intermediates. It does depend how quick track dries, though. As I said, there's been some tweaks to the scale of the wear to try and make that transition a bit more realistic and quicker than it has been in past seasons. So hopefully that's going to help the drivers in being able to handle these conditions. But we'll see how that all pans out by race one. Obviously, you've got the warm-up after this as well, and it's going to give the drivers time to try and drive the track a bit more. I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a number of drivers out there in the warm-up trying to dry out the track a bit more so that it isn't so awkwardly in that middle phase, because at the moment it's still very nip and tuck. I mean, the dryers are probably going to work for guys towards the front, but those stuck in the midfield or back who are going to be obviously racing side by side, the inters may be, by looks of it anyway, from what I'm seeing, may still be a sort of a choice there. So it's a very awkward scenario tyres-wise at the moment. And this is always the difficult ones that really test the driver, trying to pick the right one and be able to keep the car straight in these kind of conditions. Stefan Rolt, by the way, has now gone to pole position on 33 flat. He's on the dry tyres. The dry tyre is now the preferred one in this qualifying session, as I mentioned, being that drying line on the racing line, and Mlinek following him up. So it is a Brasilia 1-2 at the moment, so good start for them.
Very good stuff. And the one risk you, of course, have with the dry tires is you do have to stay in that rut and kind of basically the dry line. And if you go off at all, you can lose so much time. You cannot brake, you cannot accelerate, you cannot turn. Essentially, you just have to keep that car in the line. And the thing about it is, it usually widens with time, but as far as I know, they have slowed down the rate at which the track actually does dry up, which means that it's going to be even longer and more difficult for drivers to judge when they should change from the intermediate tires onto slicks, especially in the race. And in qualifying, of course, as you said, we don't have to pass anybody. But then again, we sometimes do have to when, for example, somebody crashes and is sideways on in the dry line. So there's always that bit of a risk.
Yeah, for sure, and it's a lovely thing with RF2, and unfortunately as well, there is the wetness on track that is shown in HUDs. They will tell you the wetness online and offline, but of course that system isn't exactly foolproof, unfortunately. So generally, you're better off kind of just going by your eye and kind of almost half guesswork really with that transition back to dry. When it's going to wet, the wet weather data is a lot more useful, but in the other way around, you're almost better off kind of just going off your own intuition and your own instinct to try and judge when to make the switch. So that's always a bit of a fascinating thing that really adds to the racing, and certainly will tonight by looks of the weather. It is sunny, of course, at the moment, so it looks like the rain has seemingly passed for now. We'll see if that does hold for the whole night, because we do see this in RF2 with the way it goes sometimes. There will be a dry period, the rain will come down for about 5-10 minutes, and then suddenly back to a wet track again. So we'll see if that happens here tonight, but the times are starting to come down a bit now. Josh Downard is gone into second spot there, and Rory Schroten now goes to the top there on the slicks once more, 132.998 for him. Very nice lap indeed for the ex-Super League driver. We seem to know how talented he is, and he's just behind another one. Lewis Redshaw, I think, is on lap at the moment by the looks of it. P5 at the moment on 34.021. He's just ahead of Daniel Brewer, who's looks like he's just gone off on a lap attempt at T1. And this is always, as we mentioned, always a bit of an awkward thing as well when you've got drivers spinning in front of you in this sort of scenario, because it can end up meaning your lap is effectively done. And there's not much you can do about it, and it can be a bit of a shame, especially if you're on a really good lap and then someone spins in front of you. You don't really have any choice but slow down and obviously not crash into them, which can be a real pain when you're on a real quick lap.
Absolutely. And speaking of spinning, Roy Schroten just spun about 20 seconds ago. So he is the pole sitter currently on provisional pole. However, he must have spun either on his fast lap. And again, it just shows how tricky these conditions are and how far these drivers are pushing their cars, just to make sure that they can actually get them up into the highest position they can. And of course, you can get back from a spin, but you usually have to go for a new set of fresh set of tires into the pits, and that usually costs you a lot of time, a couple minutes. And at this point, you don't really have the time. So Ray Schroten will have to go on these tires for another lap if he wants to try and improve. However, he also mentioned Joan Danward, and he did make an improvement to second place at the time, currently third. However, as soon as he crossed the line, he ran out of fuel, and he is out of qualifying for the rest of the running. Therefore, he will only be going down.
Yeah, and obviously with the conditions constantly improving over the session, although we only have 40 seconds left, so I think he could be safe here, and it won't actually end up being too bad. But yeah, very interesting decision. But Redshaw has now gone pole on the 32.216, so Lewis showing that talent that we know he has in spades. So good stuff there from Redshaw. We've got 30 seconds left in the session, so we'll have the final laps going through now. Looks like Dan Brewer is going to get over to have one more. If he's got the fuel left, he can do one more run there. Currently P6 for him. Gaps are a bit spread at the moment, but you always find this with these variable condition races. It always does make the gaps a little more exaggerated with everyone having to deal with the weather. So it's always a bit of a factor that you've got to have here. But looks like we had a nice juicy battle at the back end of the 10. There's a good few 10s covering good 8th down to about 11th or so. There's some good little battle packs throughout the whole field. We've got plenty of people all very close in the time sheets. But at the moment, it's looking pretty good for Redshaw to potentially have pole. We've got Maciej Blinek going around now, I believe, on a fast lap. Will be his last lap of the session. 1.1 seconds off pole for now in that Brazilian machine. Very, very unique looking Brazilian machine. Certainly stands out from the crowd, just like the last year's car as well. Very much the same design ported over the SC car. I think it works pretty well. I think it certainly catches the eye. There's no doubt about that. But we can see him now going through the final corner, looking like a pretty clean run. Was a little bit squirrely through the fast S's, but he comes across now. I'll be hoping to maybe at least jump a few spots. And he does better than that. Goes pole on 32.023. Maciej Blinek, great time from him. And he now goes pole as Johan Lindberg improves and jumps to 6th as well. And we've got Dan Brewer coming through to finish his last lap now as well.
That is very impressive from Maciej. And again, this kind of proves as well that the later you go on a wet track with slick tires, of course, the track gets a bit clearer in terms of, and maybe even just a slight bit of rubber on the track helps that bit of grip there on the dry line. And you just are able to pull those 2 or 3 tenths just purely on the track conditions. As Daniel Brewer actually goes in 3rd place as well. Again, track conditions improving. However, Lewis Redshaw will definitely be starting up from, by the looks of it, 2nd place. So still pretty good. And Nirnyar Kumar goes in 3rd place. Again, I think that this is going to be very interesting in the race start, as you said as well, because now we're going to have, I think, very mixed up grid in terms of the driver's performance is not necessarily shown in their times in qualifying, just due to simply putting the times in at different times of the session.
Yeah, for sure. It's as I mentioned. I mean, these conditions always mix up the field and always make the grids a bit more of a mixed bag for all the drivers involved. So, and I think you're right. I think we'll probably see that here for this race. Good to see a lot of the drivers improving there at the end, so the gaps are a little bit closer throughout the field. But yeah, it should be a really interesting first race here. As I said, it is still in that transition phase. I mean, there is a single line that is dry enough for dryers, but the moment you go off that line, there's not really going to be much grip there, as you can still see the dampness on your screens. So it's still in that awkward phase. And as I said, they'll be doing laps in the warm-up to try and probably dry it out a bit more, but I don't know if it'll quite move on enough to dry up to not be in that sort of mixed phase again. So we might see some on dries, some on inters here for the start of this race. So we could see all sorts of interesting stuff going on there. As you can just see, I think Pazel there just found out the moment you go off and give it even the slightest bit of throttle, you can spear into the walls. He's trying to get around the pits and probably testing the conditions as well. So yeah, we could be in for a really juicy proposition here. It could either go really excitingly and really well, or it could turn into a bit of a carnage fest. I mean, that's always the balance you're striking with these races, but obviously we'll find out in the next 5-10 minutes.
Yes, of course. And another thing is, of course, what they have to take into account is one side of the track, I think the pole sitter side, in fact, is now dry or dry-ish, while the other side is completely wet since nobody's running on the wet part of the track. So now, are the drivers going to be trying to maybe clear that part of the track up, especially the ones starting on the even numbered grid spots?
Yeah, well, they might give it a go. I think they'll try and clear up what they can. But as I mentioned, unless they're going to have to run over it quite a few times for it to make any sort of real difference to the track grid level. And I just don't think running over it in the warm-up is going to quite be enough. So it's really a difficult proposition. This is the thing they're going to have to deal with. People on the inside are off the racing line. It will be wet, and the dryers will not grip. I can guarantee you that. So they almost may be forced to take the inters here. They may have their hands forced in this and have to take the inters or wets, at the start of this race, which is going to work when they're off the line, but online they will heat up pretty quickly and pretty severely, and they will lose quite a chunk of pace. So it's a really awkward scenario, as I mentioned. It is in that middle phase in race terms. Where, I mean, the dry is great if you can stay on line, but again, as I mentioned, you're in a race scenario here, so you're going to be going side by side with cars and going off the line, and that's the sort of difficulty they've got with the line. Is probably enough now for 1.5 to 2 car lengths in most parts from what I'm seeing, but as I said, the moment you go on that wet stuff with the dry tires, they will spin and you will have no grip, and that's just how it is. So I'm seeing a bunch of them out there in warm-up at the moment, looking like you've got a bit of a mixed bag. You've got a few on the dries. Looks like, in fact, probably most, I would say, on the dries. But you've got a few who are out there on the intermediates, looking like they might go for them for the race starts. So I don't know. I'm getting the feeling we got a bit of a pot that could boil over here for the start of this one. But you know, hopefully the drivers will be able to keep everything under control. But obviously in these conditions, you know, it's very easy for us to say this from the booth, but obviously out there on track, it's a very different story.
Absolutely. Also, actually, there are some, even though this is the beginning of the season, we do have some penalties coming over from last season. That's why some of the drivers may not have put in a representative lap time either. Drivers like Jack Mayer or Patrick Gerber, or other drivers like, now that I'm looking at it, I think we have another couple. It's just that there's a very long list and a lot of drivers aren't driving, but at least those two are definitely there, starting from the very back of the grid. So some drivers are already having to deal with penalties, even though this season has only just about to begin.
Yeah, for sure, and that's obviously the way the penalties do work here. That if any driver has one outstanding, they don't serve, and they do race again. Excuse me. They have to serve that penalty, obviously, because he is still outstanding. So we do have a couple carried over from last season that some of the drivers have to deal with, and always a bit of an interesting factor and a bit of a weird one when you come in for the new season, set a quali lap, and then you've got a penalty that's sort of hanging over your head that still comes into effect. But that's just the way things work. But so yeah, we're just waiting for warm up to finish up. We've got about just over 2 minutes to go, and yeah, as I mentioned, I mean, I think most will go dries. I think that's going to end up being the strategy, but start could be very dodgy for those on the inside because there will be no grip at all on the dry tyres. That much I can guarantee. So, yeah, it's at the moment it's better that you qualified second. Really, pole's actually disadvantage here at this start. So, and as I said, this is the joys of variable weather and what the drivers have to deal with, and we've seen it in past races. I know Hungary last year in Super Leagues, one that springs to mind for me, and was certainly a very intense race, and that's what these guys have to deal with in the longer first race, of course. But we'll see how it pans out. 33 laps in, of course, for the first race, the feature length race here at Supercup, as per usual. We've got the feature length first and the sprint race coming up after that. And I would say by the sprint race, as long as it doesn't rain, we should be good to be on dries. I think that'll be pretty much sorted. But yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, if it does come down again, even if it's only for a couple of minutes, if the rain comes again, if it's heavy enough, it can just pretty much negate any drying of the track that's been done beforehand. So that's something the drivers are going to have to keep an eye out for, keep an eye on the heavens to see if that happens.
Now, of course, there's also one more reason you might want to use intermediate tires at the beginning if the track was possibly not as dry as it seems like to be now. But it could be that there's a bit of more of a freedom in tire choice throughout the race if you do. Since the drivers do have a mandatory pit stop in the feature race, and they do have to use both compounds of tires, and of course, a lot of drivers will have qualified on the dry tires, which they have to use for the start of the race as well. So unless they use intermediate tires, so there's always this bit of a playing around with juggling the tires realistically. But I think, to be honest, it would be a bit of a suicide nearly to go for intermediate tires at the start of the race unless it is going to rain, just on the basis that even though it may be difficult to start the race, I think the tires will overheat too quickly for even intermediates to last for the stint.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think I agree with that one. And apart from that first kind of few laps where it's all very gaggled together, I mean, the dries are going to be the way to go, and I think most will do that. A couple at the back probably will try the inters. I mean, it's always worth, especially if you're at the back anyway. It's always worth having a go at trying that alternate strategy to see if you can gain anything that way. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out because and as Chris is RD, of course, Chris Williamson, the race director, as always, does a stunning job with every race turning up to do that job, without complaint every single time. And obviously on the mod team as well. So big thanks to all Chris's work. But just mentioning the rules again, as always, just to refresh the drivers' minds, and just mentioning that obviously if you do the intermediate tyre, that dry tyre rule doesn't actually apply. So you don't have to use both compounds. So there could be a bit of strategic sort of benefit to using that. If you can make the inters work well enough, you then don't have to use both compounds. You can just go that quicker compound for the rest of the race, which could be a very helpful thing to have depending on how this race pans out.
Indeed. And again, I just feel like as much as you'd want to use the intermediates, you can't. At this point, it's a bit too dry, isn't it? And I see drivers like Daniel Brewer actually driving over those wet grid slots just to try and get them a bit less wet for the start. It's interesting though, because some drivers will not want them those grid slots to be dry, since they're going to be starting on the dry side and it'll have an advantage. So there's always this bit of mind tricks as well in racing.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just seeing Linux there having a practice start as well from that left hand side as they go down there. So they'll be on the dry stuff. But even then, just looking at the grid slots, they're actually obviously not all the way to the left. So they're actually, part of them may even be just that little bit on the wet part of the track by looks at it. And obviously, with the way the formation works, you have to grid up in the proper spot, and the way the grid slots are going to work, they're going to have to be pretty center line on that grid slot. So they may even have one of the right side wheels, because it's kind of touching a bit of that dampness on the right side. So they may not even get a sort of perfect launch on the left side either. So, you know, I don't know. The start could be a bit of a gaggle. So I mean, we were discussing before when we see the first crash of Supercup, and I mean, with this weather, with the way the starts can be in the wet, especially if they're on the sort of, you know, the different tyre compound. I mean, we may see one off the start, to be honest, in these weather conditions. So we will find out in about a minute or two's time. But yeah, this should be certainly a firecracker way to start this season, I'm sure.
Yeah, and to be honest, it is that exact moment when you're so glad to have a limited slip differential in the back of that car, because you do always get that bit of a grip on the dry side. And even if it is dry on the right, they can very much quicker get the grip by moving onto the dry line in a matter of a couple of meters, unlike the guys on the right-hand side of the grid, which will have to take a while and possibly not be able to take the dry line, considering there's going to be cars already on their left-hand side. So it's going to be very, very tricky. And even then, once we do get to turn one, the drivers on the inside will have the benefit of taking the apex on a dry line, while some people may have to take the wet line on the outside. So it's going to be an absolute mess. But I hope that everybody is going to get through it cleanly. But I think we'll see a good bit of it really once they're going to start going out of their start boxes, right for the formation lap, because we're going to see them start from the grid slots.
Yeah, for sure. So it's it's going to be a real cracker of a race. The weather still is kind of hanging around. There are some clouds I'm seeing in the background that may come back to play a part. So as I mentioned, that always is something to keep an eye on as well. But hopefully the track should load up to its past state. It's always something that can catch you out. You kind of forget that the weather system will just go from the end of the last session. It won't refresh, so to speak. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, I guess we'll get ready to call the grid as the drivers all get on track. They're all waiting for each other. I think they're trying to sort of second guess each other and what they're doing. But it looks like, from my eye anyway, that most are going on that dry compound tyre. There might be a couple further back I'm just looking at now who may go for the inters, but it looks like everyone I'm seeing on the grid at the moment is on the dries. So it looks like it's a pretty universal decision on that one. Oh, no, we've got one on the inters. That is, oh, no, he's on the softs. There you go. So it looks like everyone, I can tell, is going the dries. So no one taking the inters. They go off on the formation.
Oh, I'm just seeing how the right-hand side is.
Oh, one's gone. Oh, we got one gone. Yeah, one gone on the formation. Who is that? That is, Limburg. Limburg, he spun it off the line. Just too much wheel spin and speared it straight into the wall.
And Jack Mayer is going to start from the pit lane as well. But let's just get down through the starting order now before we finish this lap, because there's going to be a lot to talk about once we do start. So Maxim Winnick taking it from the pole for the first round of the season. Lewis Redshaw in second place with Nirnyar Kumar in third. Fourth for Daniel Brewer. Fifth for Roy Schroten. Sixth for Stefan Ruwalt. And seventh for Josh Downward. Eighth was supposed to be Johan Lindberg, but he has crashed out, so that spot will be empty for the start. Yuri Kasdorp in ninth. 10th for Osvaldo Angelone, Mike Fint in 11th. 12th for Patrick Kraus. 13th for Mark Fuller. 14th for Antonio Hraljanovic. 15th for Bastian Peisler. 16th for Gerard Batalla. 17th for Matthew Marquardt. 18th for Mikael Tuomala, 19th for Jean-Pierre Helpap, 20th for Benz Zupanek, 21st for Mike Bell, 22nd for Gerrit de Vries, 23rd for Adam Osger, 24th for Fabian Rude, 25th was supposed to be Jack Mayer, but he will be starting from the pit, so that will be an empty spot on the grid. 26th for Douwe Tapper, and 27th and final entrant for this race will be Patrick Gerber. And as good news would have it, Johan Lindberg, after the crash on formation lap, will be starting from the pit lane.
Yeah, indeed. So just thankfully being a crash on formation lap, as long as you can get back out into the pit lane before the lights go green, you can start the race. And he is in that scenario. Oops, I saw Green Stripes' car on the grass there. So yeah, it's. I mean, I don't know what to expect from this start. It could be fascinating, or it could be a bit of a mess. I'm leaning to the latter, to be honest, but we'll see. There's plenty to look forward to in this race. As we're waiting in the back end of the field's about to line up, and we'll be good to go for the first race of Super Cup in 2018. And tell you what, it is going to be a juicy one.
It's going to be juicy, and Maciej Młynek is halfway out of his pit box at the start, trying to, and a lot of the drivers behind him, just to try and maximize his grip for the race start, as we're still waiting for drivers to line up and get the green lights out, or red lights out, in fact, as we have all of them lit up, and here we go. And the first start of 2018, and drivers barely able to start off from the line. Again, right-hand side, barely getting in the grip. We have drivers already crashing out, and there's a massive pileup on the starting line. Who has
they're still going. Oh my goodness, wow. Yeah, that was a massive crash from about pretty much half the field back, and it pretty much blocked the entire track. It was a massive accident, and it looks like it was one of the drags. Oh, he's just got a bit of wheel spin. It was actually Antonio. He just got wheel spin on that right-hand side. It's come across to the left.
Oh, crash, massive crash. We have had, I think that was Nirnyar Kuma.
Mike Quint. No, Mike Quint. He's the one that's gone, no front wing either, so he's basically going to be at the back now. So I'll tell you what, that's starting from the pit lane. It may be a very smart call in this one.
Yes, no, there was another crash in through just in the second sector near Nyar Kumar. I think had a bit of an off and then got collected by a massive drag.
Oh, another
one. This is an absolute mess.
Yeah, this, as I said, this is what happens when you get variable conditions and you try and have everyone basically on the dry tyre on the one line. As there's more, there's a green stripes and another car, and he's come across, and there's more cars. Just race. There's going to be, and there's more at the S's. There's going to be about 12 cars left at the end of lap one here. It is absolute mayhem.
Yes, we have absolutely a whole bunch of drivers without front wings, and with cars that are barely drivable, all the way down to, I think, 19th place at the very, or beyond 19th place. I think I have been in some massive accidents and require pit stops. And more drivers with contact. Gerrit de Vries with Mark Fuller and Jack Mayer involved there as well. Down at the lower positions. This is an absolute mess for a start of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, look at him battling. This is back in 15th, 14th. Mark Fuller and Rabel are side by side. I think Fabian, he might do it, but Mayer's nearly had contact. They made contact. The teammates have nearly taken each other out. And Fuller's going back on the line, and there's Lindbergh. There's a big crash in front of them. My goodness me. I mean, at the moment, it's just, you can count on one hand how many drivers have not had an off in this first lap. But I'll tell you who hasn't, and who's leaping away. Maciej Młynek has absolutely flown off the line. Look at him. He has already got a 5+ second gap to Roy Schroten. Who's now Yuri Gastorp in third. He had a very nice start to keep that nose clean. He's got Dan Brewer and Stefan Ruot behind. So it looks like the top 10 are probably the only ones who have not had some sort of incident at the start.
This is absolutely crazy. And yes, as you're right. And I think Roy Schroten was the only other driver to really keep away from all this mess. Even though this is very interesting because Roy Schroten got overtaken by Nirnyar Kumar at the very start. And Nirnyar Kumar must have spun out right in front of him, and somehow he managed to actually get away. And I think that is exactly where the 4 seconds came out of. The Roy Schroten trying to avoid his teammate crashing out another 5 people. So it is absolutely a complete mess of the first couple laps. As we have another spinner, it's Patrick Krause.
Yep. He's going to have to rejoin in there as well. He's managed to rejoin clearly. But I was just going to mention, was got another car off at T1, I think, there as well. But just mentioning a good little pass there. Really nice pass from Dan Brewer on Yuri Gastorp. Ran the outside into the final section or sector of corners into the right-hander there at the last sector of the track. Really nice pass from Brewer. And then now puts him in third spot with some clear air to his teammate Roy Schroten. So he seems to be on a mission, Brewer. His teammate Schroten is as well. And Schroten not really losing too much time to Mlenek. I say that, nearly spun. He just touched the damp stuff on the track. And as I mentioned, that's all it takes. You just touch it off the line and then you're gone. There is no grip at all. So really good catch there from Schroten. But it looks like Gastorp just struggling a bit. Doesn't have the raw pace of the cars around him. I think he did qualify a bit further back. Just managed to get a clean start. And that's why he's managed to get his way up into fourth spot. But he's now going to have to try and fend off the second Brazilian car of Stefan Roth. We've got a nice battle for sixth behind them as well. Lewis Redshaw's under the pump from Osvaldo Angeloni. And we know how talented he is in various machines as well. So he's looking pretty juicy for that battle for sixth spot. Josh Downard is a bit of a gap back in P8 for GSR. And you've got Bastian Paisley and it's Mike Bell at the moment, rounding at top 10. So it's looking good, I got to say, for Cosmo at the moment. Double top 10 for them. So I think Josh Anderson will be very happy to see that one. But obviously only 2 laps in to this 33-lap race. Plenty of time for things to change in this one. And with the, with the conditions as they are, I'm sure they will.
It is crazy, yes. And as you said, Cosmo, actually, here's an interesting fact. If you look at the drivers, all the drivers except for Cosmo in the top 10 are actually driving on and actually Bastian Paisley are driving on the softer compound of tires, while Bastian and both Cosmo drivers are actually driving on the harder compound. So this is a very interesting choice, as we had a bit of a battle there with Stefan Rilt and Yuri Kastorp, and I think this is an actual on-track battle. And right behind him, also Lewis Redshaw being attacked by Asfaldo. And this is, I'm just hoping that the drivers are reasonable enough not to go onto the wet stuff too much and cause another carnage.
Yeah, well, right, they made the move on into T1, went on the inside of Yuri Gastorp. Really nice move, actually. He just managed to, give him enough room and stay enough on the dry stuff that he can make the move stick. They were very close to contact into T1. Gastorp, not really keen to let it go, but he was kind of hand-forced in that regard and has to settle for fifth spot. It looks like Redshaw and Osvaldo are closing as well. So it looks like Gastorp, his pace isn't quite there with, the cars around him. And more benefited from a nice clean start. But as we know, in any race like this, where there is variable conditions, if you can just keep the nose clean, you'll be in for a good result. So if you can just keep out of trouble, not have any major spins, there's every chance that you could hold on to either top 5 or even a top 10 as well. So, keep an eye on Yuri. And we know how talented he is in various machines. Obviously, as I mentioned before, more known for his antics in endurance racing than open wheelers, and does very well in most cars that he does get behind the wheel of. So looking pretty solid here at the moment. As I say, his pace not quite up with the top 3, but still looking pretty solid nonetheless to at least be battling the top 10. So if you just keep the nose clean, I reckon a top 10's potentially on the cards for Yuri, as that battle behind him of Angeloni and Redshaw is continuing on. It looks like Angeloni just not quite got the pace on that harder compound tire to make the move. He's looking very aggressive there behind Redshaw to try and make something work.
But I think that is actually not a bad move from the Cosmo drivers. I think that this is actually smart, because even if you are a little bit slower, and as we can see, Osvaldo is actually very, very fast on this compound of tires. I think that this will be a benefit on the basis that at the end of the race, the track will be much less wet and a bit more rubbered. So once they're on a softer compound of tires, as Osvaldo nearly drives into the back of Lewis Redshaw, we will have a faster paced car on a softer compound of tires with the ability to overtake safely. So I think that Osvaldo, if he can keep it there on the softer compound, on the harder compound of tires, I think he is in for a very, very good result.
Yeah, for sure. As I was just watching, as Fabian's gone flying off there, trying to avoid being in the way of the faster cars. Hopefully he can rejoin safely. He does, but it was very close there between Brewer and Schroten. I mean, credit to Brewer. Really, took it by the scruff of the neck there and took the chance of Schroten being held by Fabian to make the move into P2. So Brewer really on a mission at the moment, trying to close down on Magic Mlenek, who at the moment is steaming away in the lead of this race. But I tell you what, Brewer's pace has been electric so far, and he looks really on a mission to get to that lead. Roy Schroten now down to third. He's now got Stefan Ruhl closing in. He's carrying Yuri Gastorp with him, who's just sticking with him in the DRS range, using that to stay in this fight, the top 5. So good stuff to see from Euro. Really consistent driving so far in this race. And then obviously we've got that battle, Angeloni and Regstall still ongoing. Josh Downard a bit further back on a lonesome 8th at the moment, but still looking strong in that top 10. And obviously Paisley P9. It's Patrick Gerber at the moment holding on in P10, looking quite strong and clean, which is sort of half the battle in these kind of races. Jack Mayer, having a look at Gerard Batella in that battle for P11. That's a juicy little battle just outside the top 10. We've got Mike Bell holding off Johan Lindberg as well, or recovering, obviously, Lindberg after having that formation lap incident. So, yeah, looks like Bell, pace not quite up there. Obviously, he was in the top 10 a little earlier on, but, as he nearly loses it through the right-hand kink there. And you got Matthew Marquardt coming up behind them as well. And then you look further back, and you've got a lot of gaps further back in the field, a lot of cars pretty heavily damaged at all, just catching a couple of spinners further back as well. I think we've already got as well a couple of retirements in Tumala and Fuller and Quint and Zupanik are all out with damage. So we're down to 23 runners already, and that's usually always the case in these races of attrition. We get a lot of retirements early on, and it's generally, if you, as I mentioned, if you can just survive without major incident, then you'll be in good stead. Just watch Angeloni nearly lose it. And actually, Daniel Brewer further down in 6th now, so it looks like Brewer has had an instance somewhere.
Oh dear. Yes, it must have been, because I'm just seeing his last sector.
The S's. Yeah.
Oh.
Or was the S's? Yeah. Oh, look at that. He's just in the S's. He's again just tipped that tire on the wet stuff and done a 360. Oh wow, he's lucky not to get collected there by Schroten or Renault. Credit to them to avoid him. Wow, that was a scary, scary moment. But either way. Yeah, well, somehow he's managed to get through without damage, which for that kind of spin at the S's is very, very lucky. But he is still in 6th, and as I said, we've seen his pace. Brewer is electric at the moment, so I expect to see him charging back through. But again, that's just helping Mlinick, who's at the moment just plugging away at the front, not seeing the world on fire, but just seeing consistent, solid laps, keeping it clean. And I mean, look at that lead. He's got a solid, nearly 10-second, probably more than 10-second lead at the moment.
Well, I don't know about that. Not setting the world on fire. I was just looking at his last lap, and he was just setting. Oh, there was a driver sideways on. Who is that? That's Yuri Castor in the chicane as well. The S's has actually gone. Oh no, Martin Winnick has retired. Is that a disconnection?
No, got to be a disconnection, surely. Let me just have a look here.
It is a pure disconnection through the last
wow.
last corner. And the worst thing is, he was pushing so well, and the previous lap was the fastest lap of the race by a second, pretty much. And he was putting in the fastest sectors on the previous lap, and still setting very close to those sectors. So Maciej Winnick, after such a blistering start, has now gone through and unluckily had a technical failure, I think is the best way to put it, of his internet by the looks of it. And unluckily, Maciej Winnick is out of contention for the win in this race. However, a driver who will be very happy about himself right now is Roy Schroten, who has nearly a 5-second lead over Stefan Ruold. And now I think he just needs to keep that car on the road and keep it at the pace that he's been putting it at, because he is seemingly matching Ruold.
Yeah, for sure. It's looking strong for them at the front. We're just seeing Gerber in the pits as well, with, I'm assuming, a scheduled stop on the super softs, probably getting the soft tyre out of the way. Got someone in behind him as well. But yeah, it's a real shame for Mlinick. He was looking so strong out in the lead of the race, and unfortunately the technical issues, as they do like to rear their head at the worst times, have appeared for Mlinick now. So real shame for him, but I'm sure he'll be back strong for the sprint race after this to try and avenge that potential win gone wrong. But either way, it's let Roy Schroten now take the lead. Stefan Ruold is still in P2 for Brasilia, so still a chance of a potential Brasilia win if Ruold can keep this pace going. As we say, Redshaw is still in that battle with now Daniel Brewer behind him, not as Voldo Angeloni, and you can see Brewer, just look at how quick he is closing on these cars ahead as he's coming down the main straight now in that DRS range. Probably going to slip out down the inside. There he goes. Has a look up the inside of Redshaw. And Redshaw, big snap of oversteer there as he just touched the wet stuff in the braking zone. But good stuff to catch that one. And that's now Brewer into P3. And I tell you what, Daniel Brewer really on a mission this race. His pace is really probably one of the only ones from what I can see so far. He's been matching Mlinick in pace. So yeah, if he can keep this up, I wouldn't count Brewer out of this one either.
I think, to be honest, we're going to see a three-way battle for the win. Honestly, at this point, it looks like Schroten, Ruold, and Brewer are on a mission, all three of them. However, it looks like they're in an inverted state to their pace. So this could be very fascinating, considering Schroten seems to be the slowest of the three. However, of course, the race is only 24% complete, and we still have pit stops to come. So there's going to be a lot of variables, and we still don't know if it's not going to rain until the end of the race.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the weather looks a bit drier now. It looks like we might not have rain for at least a good chunk of time, but you know, you never know in these races. But that it all ends up. Jack Mayer and Batella are still having a nice battle, by the way, in P9 now, obviously with Lennox disconnecting. So that's a good little battle there with Mayer on the soft tyre, Batella on the super softs, and they're dinging away at the back end of the 10. A good way off the lead already, a good 30 seconds off the lead, showing again that difference in pace throughout the field, especially when it's in these conditions. It really shows those who can keep it on that very narrow dry line, and those who maybe are just struggling a little bit in that regard. So really interesting to watch that develop as the race goes on. Daniel Brewer continuing his charge through the field, 6.5 seconds off the lead. Got some traffic in the way before his next victim, which of course is Stefan Ruolt in P2. Was Rory Schroten just having to lap Adam Osger there and getting very close to swiping off the nose of the Deltec machine. Last lap, Ruolt was 2 seconds faster than Schroten, so a little bit of a pace advantage to Ruolt at the moment, but it's not too much. Oh, geez, Osger going off in front of the leaders as well is always a nice sight. Oh no, Lewis Redshaw getting balked there by Halep, and that is gifted Angeloni. Oh man, is Angeloni drifting it around the lap car, and suddenly we've got this battle for fourth back on again.
Yes, and by the looks of it, it was just one of those moments where Angeloni just wanted to get onto the dry line realistically, and get in that draft of Redshaw, just trying to keep up on the harder compound of tires. And I just seen a comment from Mike Pittman of all people about how Winnick has pulled a Van Buren, and he'd know the best at what happened at Sochi last year. So yes, of course, it is always such a disappointment when you have that happen. I think Jeffrey Fournier last season also had that happen a couple times, where he was leading and suddenly he was disconnected from Supercup. So it is unluckily it's the equivalent of a car failing in real life, unluckily, for us to be disconnected, or a computer failing, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah. It's the equivalent of that in sim racing terms, which is a real shame. But unfortunately, it can rear its ugly head in the sim racing stuff that we do, being obviously technology dependent. So it is something that drivers have to deal with when it does happen. So again, big shame for Molinek, because he was on and looking very strong in the lead of this race, but unfortunately it was not to be. But such is the way it does go. Update to the lead at the front. Ruolt closing quite significantly last lap, 2.6 seconds now. And then, as I mentioned, they've still got Dan Brewer coming in as well. So I do think we will have that 3-car battle for the lead soon enough. That Redshaw-Osvaldo battle is still going on strong. The battle for P4. Good to see them trading paint almost in that regard. Gastrop, despite the spin, is still sitting strong in P6. So good to see. Then you got Josh there in 7th, Paisley in 8th, and then Mayer and Batalla continuing their battle in P9 and 10. Got a good battle in P12 as well, as I think we were just seeing some issues there in the replay from one of the cars. But yeah, Dowie Tapper and Johan Lindberg having a nice little battle for P12 as they continue on, really using all the road there on the exit as well, which is really dangerous with the weather as it is. But, you know, looking like it's working so far. But yeah, Tapper looks like the stronger driver pace-wise at the moment. But Lindberg also, as we saw, trying to recover through the field to, you know, after the spin on the formation, starting with pit lane, and looking pretty strong at the moment. But Tapper is not leaving the back end of that YTF1 machine alone by the looks of it.
You said something about Daniel Brewer being on a mission. So he is. Last lap, the fastest lap of the race of anybody. He has done a 130.7. Ruolt did a 131.3, and Roy Schroten doing just a 31.8, a second of the Schroten's time, and pretty much half a second off of Stefan Ruolt's time. Daniel Brewer and Ruolt seem to be closing in at a rate at which we're going to have a three-way battle right off the bat as soon as they both close into Schroten.
Yeah, for sure. It's looking like being a really juicy proposition there between the lead three, as we are a third of the way through this feature race. 11 of 33 laps complete. We are seeing the track drying up quite nicely as well. There's all one lap cars there having to get out of the way. Garrett DeReese there trying to keep his way out of the leader's path. Unfortunately, having to go off track as well. Ooh, a bit of an interesting rejoin there, having to come in front of Brewer, but worked out anyway. But yeah, look at that. You can see visibly Rolt closing in on Schroten. You can see the amount of traffic they're dealing with as well, as the cars have been struggling in these weather conditions, are really playing a part in the traffic. I mean, you're probably, obviously in the dry weather, you wouldn't see this much traffic this early on in the race, but the way the wet weather has really mixed up the field, you're seeing a lot of traffic really early on in this race, and that's really playing a part in this battle for the lead three, who have kind of galloped away. Oh, and I was just about to say, yeah, you Gastor. Yeah, just
Gastor, no front wing. I think he must have had an off somewhere. Yes.
Yeah, just replay. It's at the S's. Yeah. Oh, that's a weird. Oh, I just got a slide on again. Just looks like he may have touched a dampness offline, and then he's gone spearing straight off into the wall. So a real shame for him. He will get that in repaired though. I shouldn't think it would be too long of a repair, but yeah, that will be a pretty big loss of time for him.
We have a first scheduled pit stop from Jared Batala going on to the harder compound of tires. I think this is actually fairly early, don't you think?
Yeah, it is quite an early call from him, and usually, as we know, we usually see it go the other way. Generally, they try and get off the slower tyre earlier so they can get on the fast tyre as soon as. But maybe there's something that they're seeing in the data. I mean, Angeloni is, as we mentioned, he's on the soft tyre, lead soft tyre runner in the early part of this race, and he's making it work quite well. He's keeping pace with most of the leading cars. I mean, obviously the top three are kind of in their own league in that regard. But
actually closing Redshaw.
Yeah, closing the Redshaw. Yeah, he has been closing the Redshaw in recent laps, so he's making that soft tyre work quite well. So maybe other cars in the field have kind of been observing that, and they're thinking, you know what, maybe going on the soft tyre isn't such a bad call. And Roshan as well, yeah, from the lead, and Dan Brewer. So yeah, I think there might be some strategies playing here. They might be thinking it's about time for that transition. So rather than pitting a bit later when with the weather and the track state, now's the time to put on that new tyre and use the soft tyre to its fullest. So yeah, interesting plays strategy-wise, but Roll continues on, as does Redshaw and Angeloni. So yeah, interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I'm still personally used to seeing what happened last season. And last season what we had was one tyre that was about 2 or 3 seconds a lap quicker, and one tire which lasted a little bit longer. So nobody ran it for more than a lap essentially by the end of the season. However, this season it seems like we do have both tires that are competitive, and they work in a way that you would expect them to. That is, the softer compound tire is faster for a few laps, and then they kind of equalize for a little bit, and then the faster compound the harder compounds become a bit faster. So maybe what they're finding now is that if they put the harder compound on, they're actually going to be quicker, and they can make it until the end of the race without having to worry about the compounds. It will be very interesting, and I just wonder what the lifetime of these tires is, because what we could have also seen is basically a very short lifespan from the soft tires. That could also be the case.
Yeah, indeed, and it's going to be a really fascinating, thing to see how this works throughout the season. See the different tyre compounds at play. As you mentioned, as Rualt pits as well, obviously reacting by the looks of it to the leading cars. Redshaw, I think Redshaw may have actually had an instance somewhere, and it looks like he has. Yeah, he has a spin at the S's again, and again, it's exactly the same as Gastorp and one of the spinners before. The exact same thing, just went a little bit too wide, a bit too deep into the first part of the S's, and then has gone spearing around and had to get it recovered. So that's why he's dropped down. He's now obviously pitted with what are probably pretty fried tyres on that car. So yeah, that now means Osvaldo Angeloni takes the effective lead of this race. Will be until he stops anyway. And obviously he's been on the softs since the start of the race, doing the alternate strategy to most of the rest of the field. And we'll see how that plays out. That may end up working in his favour. He's been able to keep it very clean, keep it off any spins or off the damp stuff. So this could be a really fascinating element to watch. As I tell you what, Stefan Roth and Rory Schroten very close, and actually Roth has jumped Schroten in the pit stop phase. So good stuff there from Roth. So that's an effective jump to what it would be the lead for now for him. So really good stuff from him, and you can see Brewer not far back. So Schroten has lost one spot, and he may not be too far off losing another one the way Brewer's going.
Very interesting. I think we may be looking at the lifetime of the tires at that rate, if this is the case, and everybody going to the pits. Also, something interesting, I was just looking at drivers, and the only drivers still on track with soft compound tires are already coming in. Matthew Marquardt, I think, is the only driver left on the track. That's Martin Marquardt, Patrick Gerber, and I think Gerd de Vries are the only drivers still left on the track on the self-composed tires. So I think we're going to just see drivers come in, and I think that these tires just cannot last that long, cannot last half a race.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it seems like they just don't have the life in them to last that as long as they were able to last year. So that's really good to see. It looks like the tires a bit more balanced and a bit more sort of refined than they were last year, and we've seen that as well in preseason testing. And I'm sure we'll see that in the race tomorrow for Super League. Be sure to keep an eye on that one because that should be a really fascinating race to watch. Obviously, all equal cars for the start of the season. And some really intriguing strategy plays going on with the tyres. We've got some who have actually taken the hard tyres. A good 2 or 3 teams have actually taken the hard tyre. We've got some taking the medium, and then most still going for what was basically the default strategy last year, which is taking all the softest compound tyres. So, going to be a really interesting race last year, and we're seeing a bit of that here in this Supercup race tonight with the way the various tyres work, because it is a very similar sort of setup in Super League as well. And I'm really fascinated to see that one there is Marquardt nearly losing it through the kink there. But so yeah, it's going to be a really fascinating one to watch. Be sure to watch that tomorrow because I really do get a feeling that the harder tyre strategy may not be such a bad call. It was suicide last year, but this year I think there's some logic to it.
Yes, of course. Last season, if you ever seen the Super League show, you will know that I was one of the biggest critics in terms of the tires last season, and I think pretty much everybody agreed by the end of the season that the tires were just not quite up to scratch. However, this season the situation has seemingly very much improved, and it's the same thing with Super Cup. I have also been kind of complaining about the situation because it was quite obvious and predictable before the race what's going to happen. And this time around, it seems like we may be getting many more viable strategies, and maybe even some drivers will be risking it to qualify on the harder compound tires if it truly isn't that much slower. Which, in my opinion, is going to only increase the enjoyment of watching this series and the unpredictability of possible different strategies in working or not working on certain tracks. And I think another thing is right now the drivers are, of course, learning the cars, learning strategies, learning everything, and it does take a few rounds before everybody gets it kind of nailed down as what they like doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's going to be an adjusting experience for the drivers as it will be in Super League, and that'll be something we'll be keeping an eye on with keen interest. But looking at the race as it stands, Angeloni, so that they're leading on the soft tyre, obviously starting on that tyre compound from the get-go. Leading by 5.3 seconds over Steven Rott at this current time, but obviously he's yet to stop, as we mentioned. And at the moment, probably looking good to still come out around about where he was in 5th or 6th spot. He's going to be still he should be ahead of Lewis Redshaw at the moment, because obviously Redshaw had that spin at the end of his last stint. He's actually come out just ahead of Matthew Marquardt, who obviously still going on the super soft. Credit to Marquardt actually making these super softs last seemingly longer than most others and still doing decent pace with them as well. So credit to him on that one. Certainly might be a little bit of a signal later on. Although that was a lot of locking there. I wonder if that was it might have been just a visual glitch. It looked like it may have been a little moment with the tyres, but I think it was a visual glitch. But yeah, still running on the super softs in that 8th spot. I wonder if he'll come in this lap. You would think now would be the time, because at this stage he's probably really just losing time to the soft tyre runners, but no, he continues on for another lap behind Lewis Redshaw. So he's behind on the car, and those tyres are going to be wearing pretty badly. I would have thought the call would have been to come in, but maybe Marquardt's seen something that we don't know in that car, as he's going to try and make a move on Redshaw into T1. Let's see what Redshaw is being. Big slide. Wow, that was a big moment of oversteer for Marquardt there. I tell you what, you want to get a replay from Lewis Redshaw, I reckon, because his view would be quite an interesting one of that little incident.
Did I just see him completely lifting off his front end as he hit the curb on the inside of that corner and going completely across the track? This is absolute madness from Matthew Marquardt.
Yeah, well, it's that look from Redshaw's view, and you just see Marquardt go shooting across in front of him at the speed of light. It really was a very scary moment for Matthew there. So credits to Matthew, though, to not actually spin that. He managed to more or less recover that pretty well. So I mean, credits to Marquardt on that. That was a really scary moment, and he handled it quite well. So, I mean, if that isn't the signal, maybe the soft time. I don't really know what is. I know he's off the dry line, but, you know, it's getting close to, well, I mean, we're over halfway now. So yes. I would have thought now's the time to change, because at this point you're only bleeding time to the the newer tyre shod cars around you. So I would say you should see Marquardt in soon. But I mean, again, credit to him for making the Super Soft last this long, because it seems like not many others are about to make it go as long as he has.
Yes, Mike Bell has actually come in for soft tires, about 55% in of the race so far, and he just got lapped by his teammate who's currently in lead. But I think we're going to see Osvaldo actually in for the softer compound of tires soon, and that is going to be the most fascinating, because he's been putting in tires very similar to a lot of the drivers doing now on the harder compound. And I am very, very interested in what he's going to be able to do once he puts on those softer compounds, because it does look like we have the track being basically dry-ish over the entire width. You still have the slightly more damp areas, but they're not as dangerous as they were at the beginning of the race, of course. So I feel like he has possibly maybe done an interesting choice, and I think that if he can overtake, he is going to be challenging for a very high place.
Yeah, for sure. No, if he can do those overtakes, which he should be able to do now. It looks like effectively offline. There is still wet offline. You can still see the dampness, but it's nowhere near as bad as it used to be. So you can probably actually run offline, at least in overtakes, and have a vague chance of having some kind of level of grip there. So we might be able to see some more overtaking going on here, and that's going to obviously help Angeloni as he comes through on the faster tyre. It's still doing good laps though. Obviously, Rolt there. A good chunk quicker on that last lap, doing a low 31, whereas Angeloni did a low 32. So, at the moment, the fresh tyres are definitely helping, but you're still bumping in some good times with what are now 19-lap-old soft tyres. So some good stuff here from Angeloni. Just been very consistent with these times. May not be doing, absolutely incredible laps, but just really nice and consistent. And that's what's really helping him in this battle. I think at the moment he's probably on to come out 5th. I think he will come out between Brewer and Paisler at the current moment, but we'll see if that changes, as we've still got Brewer trying to come through to catch Roy Schroten. He's just behind Schroten's teammate, actually, Nurajane Kumar, ready to lap him. So waiting for Kumar to get out of the way. Might be some plays going on here. I think Kumar maybe not being too quick to get out of his way, seeing as they're on a battle with his teammate. He goes to the inside there. Ooh, geez, a bit awkward there with the way that went out, but they all managed to get through no problem. But Brewer trying to close in on Schroten. It seems like his pace has kind of leveled out a bit. It seems like maybe he's not quite as comfortable in the softs, because he's not quite as electrifying as he was at the start of the race.
Yeah, possibly. Of course, some drivers will prefer the softer tires, some drivers will prefer the harder tires. It actually very much depends on the driving style. Also, just as I mentioned, for anybody watching, if anybody wants to ask any questions, please feel free on the simnews.tv YouTube channel, as I am monitoring that chat currently of that stream. So if any questions, please feel free to put them in, as we have Osvaldo and Angelone actually in pits for the softer compound of tires with just under 40% of the race to go. Yeah,
indeed, he has come in with about 13-14 laps to go, and he will just beat out Paisler out of the pits, so that's good for his race, and he will just beat out Antonio as well, so that means he won't have to deal with that traffic, which is handy. So played quite well for Osvaldo there. Got a nice clear track ahead of him to try and chase down the top 3. We'll see how he goes. It is a pretty hefty gap. He's a good, probably, well, I mean, Paisler's about 17, so he's probably a good 15 seconds off the lead, so it's a pretty big margin. He's going to have to be closing in at a good second a lap every lap to catch the leader at least, but we'll see how it goes. At the very least, he's got at the moment a 4 secured, as long as he keeps on the straight and narrow, which is still a really good result for the Cosmo team. I'm sure Joshua Anderson will be very, very happy with a top 5 their campaign in the first round of the season. And also Bell in the points as well in 15th. So at the moment, Mike Bell will get a point in the sister car. So double points for that team. I think Joshua Anderson will be very happy with that. Indeed, so I'm actually just watching as well the battle further back, 7th place, Josh Downard and Jack Mayer. Mayer also, remember, having done the alternate strategy, same strategy as Osvaldo, and he's looking pretty pacey in that ST Racing machine. Also, something very interesting is we finally had Matthew Marquardt in the pits after he has completely killed his soft tires, I have a feeling. So he's now on the harder component tires and running 11th. So I don't think that was the best choice to run them as long, but then again, he is the driver and I'm just here as in the booth. Indeed, agreed on that one as well. But yeah, as we say, he's the one in the driver's seat, so may have seen something in the data. I just was watching Daniel Brewer had a bit of a half look at turn 1 and kind of went a bit deep there and lost the rear end a little bit, which hasn't helped his cause in this battle with Roy Schroten. But he does look like he's got the pace on Roy at the moment. Has been closing and closing ever since the pit stops. So currently looking like we've got a nice little battle here for P2. Ruot holding the lead in that Brasilia car and looking quite strong to hold that lead to the end if he can just keep it nice and clean. But obviously in these variable conditions, that is never as easy as it sounds. So we'll see how that plays out. Bastian Paisley, I think, deserves a little shout as well. It's been a really strong race for him in P5. Been just quietly plodding along ever since the start. Managed to have a clean getaway, stay out of trouble, and has really benefited from others' mistakes and spins. And currently fifth. Sledstraw is still in P6 in that drag machine. A bit of a difficult race for him having that spin earlier on at the S's, which cost him a pretty handy chunk of time. Still on in 6th spot at the moment. Jack Mayer has managed to get by Josh Downard in that battle for P7, so he now jumps the spot in the ST Racing Machine. Downard down to 8th for the Green Stripes Racing entry. Garo Batella, is P9, and Yuri Gastrop currently runs out your top 10 in that YTF1 machine. On the back of Patella, though, I'm looking like he might want to make a move potentially very soon. They also have, of course, Marquardt in that on those freshly shot softs behind them too. So some good battles shaping up further down the field as well.
So interesting enough, if we have had a Martin Winnick running without that disconnection, I think we would have actually been having 2 Scuderia Basilea cars up in the front, which, as Mike Bitten puts it, kind of looks ominous for the season. Well, hopefully it's not going to be domination by any means, but I do feel like that is a very strong entry this season if this race is anything to go by.
Yeah, well, I mean, we know how strong Mlinick is. He's shown his talent in Super League, and it's certainly in open wheelers, particularly. He's got a very much a knack for them in Rfactor 2, and shown that many times before, and showing it again here today. Ruot, from what I saw last season, was a bit hit and miss in Supercup last year, but showed his talent in 2016 in the Formula Challenge Series. And it seems like this mod this year, this car this year, suits him a lot better than last year's car, didn't he? Actually seems to have got a bit of that spark pack again that we'd seen him have previously prior to last season. So looking really strong in that car, and a really good teammate to Mlinick. So as you say, I mean, they are looking like a very strong pairing, and it is certainly a bit ominous right now seeing these two running at the front throughout the race. It's a very ominous sign for the squad, and really looking strong to have a really strong campaign this season. But we'll see how it goes. Obviously, still plenty of time for other teams to fight back to them, and obviously plenty of talent in this field to do so. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that as this develops. Dan Brewer, by the way, back trying to have a go at Roy Schroten once again in that battle for P2. As we've got Bastian Paisley pitting from P5. For super softs as well, so he also actually run the alternate strategies, 22 laps on the softs, so really nice stint on those. He should come out about P7, so P7, P8 probably. Impressive. And actually might almost come out in that battle nearly between Batella, Gastorp and Downard, a pretty close battle from P8 down. He's going to beat them out in P7, so still on for a strong result. He's not too far behind Jack Mayo, who's on the same strategy, so we'll see if that plays out, but still a very strong race for him in that car.
Indeed, and another thing that I've just seen, again, from this time Ben Willis, it looks like apparently Lewis Redshaw wasn't able to race until about 3 hours ago. So at the moment, it looks like it may have been a powder cut or something to do with maybe not being able to get. Of course, we have fairly bad conditions on the islands right now in terms of snow, and he apparently was not able to drive, and so 5th place at the moment is quite great for somebody who wasn't able to race until a couple hours ago. So
yeah, for sure. No, and we know Redshaw, we know how quick he is. Obviously, seen it in Super League many a times, and obviously even in last year, at the start of last year, with the Woods team, obviously really struggling to make that car work in race conditions. He still was able to drag that car to results it probably really shouldn't have had, and he still was able to get some really nice running in that car. So he's certainly, we know he's talentless, Redshaw. We know that he's even if he doesn't have the ideal practice time leading up to a race, he'll still in the race learn the car and be able to really quickly adapt to the situation. So big kudos to Redshaw in that regard, to be sitting in P5 and looking really strong for a good strong result for Drake. in the first race of the season. But yeah, we'll see how this all is looking towards the end. I'm really interested to see how this battle with Schroten and Brewer unfolds, because if they have any sort of issues, Osvaldo is there about 10 seconds back from them to pounce. As I said, he's not really closing on them. His pace is maybe a good few tenths faster each lap, and he's closing slowly but surely. Oh,
Schroten just made a bit of a mistake, and now Brewer's right on the very back of him. A battle for second place. This is going to be fascinating at this point. I think that we will see a possible overtake on the DRS, as we have Osgur actually letting go on the grass. However, coming into the final section of the two corners, Dial Brewer on the very back end. Schroten looks up into the left-hander, and Brewer will now be hoping to be very close and open that DRS and hope for an overtake in one of the two coming DRS zones.
Yeah, indeed. And as I said, Brewer, we've seen his pace been pretty strong all race long, and looking really keen to have a go at Roy Schroten here in this battle for P2. Really, really close to the back end of the machine in front. And but I'll tell you what, Roy Schroten seems to have his car, Trimble Brewer, have a bit of a half look there into the right-hand hairpin. But yeah, Schroten looking pretty strong in a straight line. He must have that thing pretty low winged, because even in the DRS, Brewer wasn't really closing at a terribly high rate of knots. So I think Schroten looks to have that car really trimmed out for the straight line. He's just kind of fanging it through the corners and you know, being able to benefit down the straights. So that seems to be really helping him in this battle for P2, because Brewer's been close enough in the DRS a couple of times to what you would think he'd have a go into the first corner, but he just hasn't been able to close even with the aid of DRS. So I think Schroten really has that thing trimmed out to top speed, and that's really helping in this battle at the moment.
Oh wow. I'm just looking at the lap times over the last lap between the two drivers. There has been 14 thousandths of a second between them as Brewer hits the wall on the braking point. Oh no.
Yeah, wow.
That will definitely hurt the car. Hopefully he will not have too much suspension damage, but he will now have a work cut out for him to catch up to Schroten, and this will be tough considering we don't have that many laps to go, and he still has to overtake Schroten, and he still definitely wants to get past him and possibly even go for Stefan Roll. But I think honestly at this rate he's way too far to catch up.
Yeah, I think he might run out of time here. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, looks like the steering on that car is straight. He doesn't look like it's too bent. If it is, it must be pretty minor, because it looks pretty straight from my screen on board anyway. So it looks like he managed to get away with that pretty unscathed, which is a pretty lucky occurrence for him in that one. But yeah, he has lost some valuable time to Roy, and that does give him the breathing space he might need in these last few laps to keep that second spot. They have been keeping the gap in all of this pretty stable to Stefan Roy, although I think Roy probably just holding on to the lead and keeping it nice and stable right now. He knows he doesn't have to do anything too risky. He just needs to keep it clean, and the win's on the cards for him. But yeah, they've been dropping too far back, and Osvaldo is plodding along behind them again, not really gaining enough to make this strategy work, which is really fascinating to watch, and something I'm sure the rest of the teams will be taking on board as well. We've got Jack Mayer also closing on Lewis Redshaw on those super softs. He's really looking threatening to that P5 for the Drake driver. And then you've got also Bastian Paisler, again, also on super soft closing as well. So we've got a nice little battle for P5 closing up. Then we've got this battle for P8 with Batella, Gastorp and Marquardt as well. So we've got some really juicy battles all throughout the top 10 to keep an eye on here in these dying laps.
Yes, there are quite a few battles as we have Batalla sideways onto the track. I think he must have just spun. Ooh. What happened there?
Go and have a look back on the replay, but yeah, it looks like it might have been a spin for him.
He touched the one bit of track that's still wet. Oh my goodness. He literally just managed to go onto the grass a little bit, onto the AstroTurf, lose the car a little bit, go to the outside of a circle, which usually would be fairly safe in dry conditions. However, this is the part of the track that nobody drives on, so it has not dried out whatsoever, and he touches the one bit of track that's wet and cannot save the car from hitting the wall. However, somehow, and he has lost the front wing, so he will have to go into the pits and has lost what was quite certain top 10 finish.
Yeah, indeed. You can see him limping around now. It's going to be a pretty hefty loss for Batella, but he should still be able to hold on for a points finish. He has got enough of a gap over the final points paying position, which is Antonio Ivanovic, who I think just actually passed by looks of it. Oh no, he didn't just pass Mike Bell. Wow, Mike Bell has got no front or rear wing. I was wondering where that changed, and it looks like almost the exact same thing. Oh, big contact as well. Exact same thing that happened to Dan Brewer. It's in the braking zone, locked him up, and it's just snapped left on him and gone straight into the wall and heavy contact with the barrier. And yeah, that car is not looking straight at all. So it's a real shame for Mike. He was on for a points-paying finish, and at the moment, yeah, as it goes to the wall again, yeah, he'll be. I think he might end up calling it, to be honest, or I think it looks like we'll try and bring it around, but yeah, that car is very bent indeed.
I feel like what happened there was possibly a driver mistake, possibly just a slightly too rearwards brake bias. So this could be just a driver mistake, and it really looks to me like a rear's locking up on the braking, where the car just usually you wouldn't have too many issues with that. But the problem with this is the track isn't as rubbered up as they would be probably used to in practicing, and maybe he tried to move it back to gain some turn in. Maybe just didn't even think about it, but the car suddenly snapped on him when he broke a little bit too hard. But anyway, I do feel like this was just a braking mistake from Mike Bell.
Yeah, it looks like from what I'm seeing as well. But either way, real shame for him, as he will, well, looks like miss out on points. But we have had. Well, it looks like he had a stop go for, I think Oshim for when he went off before, but had that removed by the stewards. But yeah, Jack Mayer, while this has all been happening, has made the move on Lewis Redshaw in the back half of the circuit. Nice move from him to get him up to P5 in that ST machine. Really looking strong in this mod, Jack Mayer. He's looking very comfortable in the car and really showing his stuff at the moment. And now Redshaw, no rest for the wickets. Now got Bastian Paisley harassing him for P6, and wow, Paisley, you can just see the difference with those fresh tyres, looking really strong out of the box. And look up the inside, really awkward move from Paisley there. Really lucky that Redshaw just leaving the space there so that they didn't come together. So Paisley gonna have to be even more authoritative than that if he wants to make the move on Lewis Redshaw.
Now, I'd like to remind everybody right now that Jack Mayer is currently driving in 5th, but he has started from the back of the grid, and I think he actually started from the pit lane. So maybe avoiding all of this mess at the very start was beneficial to him, and he is running in 5th place currently. This is actually a great race from Jack Mayer, and all the credit to him for pulling it out.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a really strong drive from Mayer all race long. He's been really, really pumping out the laps and looking very strong, as I mentioned, in that car. I know he has had trouble before with the various mods just getting the consistency going, but it seems like he really has it nailed in this Supercup car at the moment. I mean, staying at the back, especially with, obviously, we saw the pretty much track blocking crash at the start of the race earlier on in the first lap off the line. To be able to get through all that and pick his way through the early carnage and be where he is now is a really strong performance. Probably, in my mind, one of the drivers of the race, I'd say, to come at the back in this kind of race and get a top 5. Really, really strong stuff from him. As Paisley has now made the move on Redshaw as well. So Redshaw down to 7th. But as long as he keeps it straight and narrow, he should be on for a 7th at the moment, because Marquardt is quite a ways back. But yeah, it looks like top part of the field's pretty confirmed. Schroten is holding on in P2, and Brewer is closing, but probably not quite enough. He might close within battling and potentially overtaking range on the last lap or two. But as we said, I mean, we saw before, but again, Brewer just has little errors. He just went a bit deep into T1, and he's basically lost what he gained effectively that last lap. So yeah, it looks like the consistency of Schroten, which we know he has, we see it, and we have seen it before from Schroten in Super League. He's a very nice consistency in the cars he drives. He ended up with the quickest car on track, but he's able to keep it clean and keep it out of trouble, and it's really helped him in this race. And really sort of been a big factor into why he's holding on second at the moment.
So a couple of interesting bits on the drivers who decided to go for the other strategy with starting on the harder compound tires. Osvaldo seems to be making times that are really, really, really fast. They're about as fast as Daniel Brewer, and right now his first sector is faster than anybody, or his fastest of the race. So he is definitely a very fast driver. So I think he'll be one of the drivers to watch out for a second race, especially. And Jack Mayer is pulling times that are not far off the times of Roy Schroten and the other lads in the pack on the front. So I honestly feel like those drivers will not be, you cannot count them out in the second race. And I am actually very excited for this, considering we will have a reverse grid.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's going to be a really, really interesting race to watch. As you mentioned, there is some good pace coming from those guys. The thing you do have to remember, of course, especially with Mayer and Pazer, is they are on fresh rubber, much fresher than the leaders. So the pace probably exaggerated their, enhanced pace on the leaders. But even so, it is still, a really good sign that we're going to have a nice, strong second race, and hopefully some close battling as well. As we're just keeping an eye on these finishing bells for this one. Brewer's still trying to close on the show, but it looks like, to my eye, Schroten should have this one in the bag as we'll come over the final lap next time by. And as long as it keeps on the straight and narrow, he should have that second sewn up. But tell you what, he's been leading the way so far. Stephen Wright, really strong performance from him. He obviously started not from pole. It was I think about 5th or 6th on the grid. Kept his nose clean early on. Made some really nice moves throughout the race and has benefited from other people's mistakes and finds himself in the lead of this race as we head towards the final lap now. And looking like, as long as he keeps it nice and straight here for the last lap and a half, looking good to take the first win of the season here in the Supercup 2018 season.
I think that this is a very strong opening, and after last season having an up and down season, I think that if he can keep this going, and if he can, well, a big if is if he can fight off Maciej Młynek, his own teammate, for the rest of the season, I think that this could be a fascinating season for Stefan, and I think he can really pull something together. However, I don't think we can discount a lot of the drivers we've seen today, like Rose Schroden and Daniel Brewer, putting in some great times either. And while Stefan has taken it away at the this race, he has not necessarily had the fastest pace of the race of anybody. So, I think that it's a great opening, but he will have to really work for it if he wants to win more races this season.
Yeah, for sure. It's a really strong sign of a strong season, especially with the tyres the way they are as well. Looking like they work very well. It added a lot of variety to the strategy, so that starting on either one is a viable way to go, and that's going to really liven up the racing as well as we see all these different strategies playing out. So looking like a juicy one ahead of us, and obviously we've got the sprint race coming up after this, where the gloves really do come off, and really we'll see some close racing going on. And obviously the track still not completely dry, but it's mostly dry at this point that you should be able to run side by side through most parts of the track, which is going to make for a really exciting second race coming up just after this. So really, really a strong season and a strong round looking like ahead. But we've got 21 drivers as well still running, so we've had only actually 6 retirements. Not too bad, I've got to say. Credit to the drivers, despite the early crashes in the first lap. Some a lot of drivers still running, which is great to see. But here comes Stefan Wright going through the final few corners to looking like take this first race.
Yes, absolutely. Also to mention quickly, Kacper has actually made a great recovery after lap 1. However, Stefan Wright, after an up and down season last time around, here he is. After bad luck from his teammate at the beginning of this race, he has taken the win in the opening round of the GPVWC Supercup season. And this is one of hopefully many for Stefan, as Roy Schoten and Daniel Brewer take the rest of the podium. Osvaldo Angelone taking a great fourth after a completely different strategy, showing us that it definitely works in this season. And I think we're going to have Jack Mayer coming in 5th place, with Bastian Paisler still chasing him down, mind you, and still hoping for that mistake. However, they're going through the final section of the corner of the track, and now Jack Mayer in 5th, with 6th for Bastian Paisler, 7th for Lewis Retshaw by the looks of it. Matthew Marquard is not going to be under any pressure for 8th, 9th for Yuri Kastorp, and 10th for Douwe Tapper if they come in at the line as they are currently.
Yeah, it's looking like there. So really good, strong results from all those drivers in the top 10. And it's going to be Josh Downard. It'll be the last car in the lead lap in P11. Then you start your lap down drivers. Jared Batella in P12. Nirajan Kumar, a bit of an anomalous race for him actually in P13, and probably be looking to improve on that in race 2. I suspect the drier conditions might suit him a bit better as well, so I expect to see him coming through a bit more in race 2. Patrick Rouse, I think he had some issues earlier on with a few spins in the opening stages, but still managed to get 14th and a couple of points to his name. And Johan Nillenberg, after starting from the pit lane and having to go from that position, ends up 15th and a point for the YT F1 outfit. Antonio ends up P16 DNF, so I'm guessing he must have retired with a lap to go or so, but still gets classified in the 16th. And then you got Gerrit de Vries, Fabian Rude, Adam Oscar, Mitchell Malinik, who did get back out on track and does end up being classified in 20th spot, which, you know, with the way the points go and with how close the season is, that result may end up crucial in the championship later on down the line. So credit to Malinik for coming back out and securing that position. And rounding out your finishers for the race is Mike Bell in 21st.
So yes, that was a fascinating race, don't you think? Although to be honest, it was a little bit of well, I didn't like the start of it, to be perfectly honest. It was a bit unclean, just messy. I know it's down to the weather, but it's a little bit possibly just down to the tires, down to everything. It's just been not great to watch at the start.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry.
However, the race was fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the lap one was, you know, obviously was quite messy with the weather, but I mean, whenever you get variable conditions like that, it always does end up being a bit like that, whether it be Super Cup, Formula Challenge, Super League, or pretty much anywhere that has this variable weather, it does get a bit messy in those early laps. So especially when you've got 27 cars on track as well, it's a lot of cars trying to fit onto basically a one-line track at that point. So a bit expected, but you know, a bit of a shame. Still, it did happen. But either way, you know, once we got past that, once everyone sort of started adjusting to the weather, it became a much better race. You know, we could just see, as I said, I mean, despite the start, we still had, you know, 21 effectively cars make it to the end, which is a really, you know, really strong finish. I mean, I've seen plenty of races before in variable conditions where we've had under half the field finish, you know, where it's been a massive attrition rate. There's just been nobody left running at the end. So, I mean, credit to all the drivers that we did have most of the field still finish. And, you know, that just kind of shows the talent of the field we have that is on offer in this Super Cup field for 2018.
Yes, and another thing is I'm so happy that the tires finally make sense. However, now we are seeing a different problem of the if you're gonna go winters or not for the start of the race, seemingly, and that was a scary start. Hopefully next race, by the looks of it, is gonna be probably completely dry, and I'm not sure. I don't think the weather carries over from the first race, does it?
I don't actually know if it does. I can't remember if it does. I thought it did, but it might not. It might not. I'm not sure. I suspect you might be right. It might not do so. But you know, as I mentioned, either way, I think by looks of it, from what I was seeing from my view, anyway, the track looked like it was pretty much entirely dry. There was a couple of little areas that had wet patches, but it looks like most of it was dry anyway. So even if it does carry over, I think it will be a nice dry race. So yeah, either way, we should have a bit more of a sort of standard, so to speak, race for the second one. But you know, with plenty of excitement by the looks of it to go with it.
Of course, we're also waiting for. We're going to be having to wait for a little bit for the number of the reverse grid drivers, because it's between 6 and 10 drivers, as every year. We will have. It's to do with the drivers not aiming for a certain position at the end of the race, just so that you get a pole position. It's random, and you just try to get as high of a position as you can in first race, because you never know if you're going to be on pole or in fourth place in on starting grid if you're sixth, for example.
Yeah, indeed. And just to confirm, thanks to Chris Williamson, very nice quick response for confirmation, the track conditions do carry over. So there you go. So they will be carried over from the race. So as I said, though, you know, there's a couple of wet patches from what I could see that were still left, but it looks like it's mostly dry. So it will be no doubt dries for everybody, and we should see some nice battling here. With a bit more freedom too, thanks to being nice and dry, with a bit more confidence from the drivers, and probably see some really nice juicy battling in this race. So yeah, looks like it should be a nice second race on offer. And yeah, let's I guess we'll find out soon who the lucky winner is of the random reverse grid draw.
Yes. Also, just before, just since we're in warm up currently, who do you think was your did the best in the last race? Basically, who was your driver of the race last time around?
Well, I think I'm gonna, as I said, I think I'd either probably go with Jack Mayer or I mean, Tapper was a good recovery as well for 10th, but I think probably the Royal Tour Mayer would be my call, I think, and probably Reg for an honourable mention, considering the lack of practice for him part of the race. But yeah, I'd probably go Mayer or Roll. Obviously, Roll for the win and just keeping the nose pretty much entirely clean all race long, and Mayer for recovering from a pit lane start to end up in the top 5. You know, it's a really strong result for him. And for ST Racing as well, who we know have you know, last year with form was not the greatest, and they had some issues with drivers, I believe, as well. But good to see them, you know, start this year so strong with the top 5. You know, Jack Mayer really stamping his authority, and as I said, you know, looking quite comfortable in this mod. I mean, to be able to get through that race and get a top 5 in those conditions, I mean, that's a pretty good sign that you've got a good head around this mod.
Yes, and especially starting from the back, of course. Well, from pit lane for him, but I think that may actually have been the better choice of the two, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I must agree with you, and Jack Mayer would be for me the driver of the day, just on the basis that he has been able to do so well, while Ruold has been a little bit lucky with the pit stops, and he's done very, very well for himself. However, I think that Maciej Winnick would be an honorable mention anyway, because if not for that disconnection, I don't think he'd have been having too many troubles in winning that race, to be perfectly honest. However,
yeah, definitely.
However, for this race, we actually have a reverse grid number of 7 with Lewis Redshaw on pole. So a lot of the drivers who were very seemingly fast near the end of the race. So again, Osvaldo and Jack, we may see at the end actually putting in very strong performance on the start and possibly going to the front with only 1 or 2 places to go in the front of them. I think we may see them possibly challenging for the win. And also another thing is that's interesting is, what tires do you think they're going to be using? Because that's a big question.
Yeah, obviously no pit stop required in the sprint races. Obviously you can if you want to, but there wouldn't be any real sense when it's not required. So yeah, you're gonna have to go the whole race on the one tire. So yeah, so suddenly, yeah, there could be a bit of a variety in this sprint race. I think most will go soft. I just feel like it'd be more consistent over a 19 lap stint. But I mean, as I said, we saw a couple like Markwood making the softer tire last nearly 20 laps. So I don't know. We'll see. I think soft will be what most choose. Which again, good to see that. Which we're good to see. You know, that tire being used more than it was last year. But I think we'll see mostly soft, but a couple maybe risk it on super softs, just judging from the rate where we were getting in that first race. But yeah, that's just my guess. But I'm sure they'll prove me completely wrong.
I completely disagree with you right now.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just looking at the drivers right now, and there's only one driver that's not on the harder compound of tires.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so it looks like maybe the soft compound of tires is just not fast enough, and it just doesn't last long enough throughout a long stint, as this will be, I think, 19 or 20 laps. So I think 19 laps plus the formation lap. And I think, honestly, it's going to be interesting because we're going to see the harder compound being run again much more this season. And I think that makes a lot more sense because, to be honest, the soft compound is the qualifying compound. So we're always going to see the soft compound there. We're always going to see it in the feature race. And last year, we've always seen it in the sprint race. So I think that seeing the harder compound being run in the second race, I think it's very good for this for this league, to be honest.
No, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely, you know, having that strategic layer, you know, much more evenly applied is really going to help with the racing in Supercup and in Super League as well, which obviously very similar tire model that's being run in the Supercup, from what I can tell anyway. So yeah, it's really going to be fascinating to watch how it goes in this sprint race. And as I mentioned, really will be interesting to watch tomorrow because, you know, who's going to win that is just, you know, I don't think anyone can really guess it. Really, there's so many talents on the field, especially with all the, you know, the various tire strategies that will be played out. I mean, it's pretty hard to pick. It's going to be towards the front in that one. So yeah, it's definitely going to make the racing just that bit more exciting, and you know, add that bit more variety of strat, all that great variable strategy in there. That always really makes things juicy in that regard. So yeah, warm-up's just finishing up now. And we're about to head to the race. So yeah, should be a pretty frantic sprint race here to finish off tonight's racing. But yeah, first one's anything to go by. I'm sure they'll put on a really good show here to finish it off.
Also, we're currently just waiting for to see if a couple drivers are coming back. As far as we can see, a couple drivers have have not been on the server, and they are coming back. At least one of them is, and so we're just waiting for that person. I think it's Patrick Gerber actually who left and is coming back, and also Antonio Verljanovic, who has left after he retired on, I think, the very final lap last in the race. So he never actually finished it. However, he was classified in 16th place. So we're waiting to see if those two drivers are going to come back.
Definitely, yeah. So just waiting on that, and then we'll head to the second race. And yeah, we're just watching the drivers heading around, getting some laps in, getting used to the current track conditions, which, as I mentioned, are pretty much, well, entirely dry essentially at this point, apart from a couple of damp areas well off the racing line, but pretty much entirely dry at this point. And yeah, going to be really fascinating to see how that plays out in the race. So yeah, it looks like it should be interesting. We're just waiting, I think, on Patrick Gerber to return, and then we'll be advancing to the race session. And yeah, the sprint race to round off this evening of racing. And yeah, really interesting first round Super Cup, which yeah, as you say, I mean, with the strategy, it's certainly a lot more variable now. Hard to pick how it will play out race by race. And yeah, as per usual, Super Cup, it always brings on a strong field. Super Cup being being the spec series, or the highest spec series in the ladder, and not having development, which you know, not everyone's cup of tea. You know, it does tend to have a pretty strong field pretty much every season, and it looks like we're going to have that once again here in 2018, which just going to make the racing obviously all the more higher quality and all the more exciting.
To be honest, 2018 looks like a very strong year for a lot of the career ladder here at GPVWC, and it is absolutely one of the most exciting things that that I know of anyway at the moment that's happening. And of course, last season we have had the champion who is now a McLaren test driver, well, simulator tester essentially. So you know, it is a very high level series, and we have so many very fast drivers, both here and in Super Cup and in Super League. So yes, it's fascinating to see them race because it is just so high level, and they are pushing the cars to their absolute limit.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, we saw that in race one with the variable weather. Saw them, you know, having to push them to the max in, you know, not ideal conditions. And now it's sort of, as I said, it's a bit more standard now, being pretty much entirely dry. So hopefully we'll see a bit more consistency throughout the field, and might see some closer battles, you know, going on for the whole race, which would be good to see. But Gerber just returned to the game now, so Chris Williamson just loading the grid in now, and we can head to race 2 here tonight, and Antonio there just joining, of course, right after Chris sets the grid. He's going to have to set the grid once more, so know the pain there for Chris of that. But yeah, just have that set, and we can get going for race 2 with 27 runners and riders once more. And yeah, it should be a really close affair. I think, yeah, going to be tough to pick a winner here, considering obviously the reverse grid and considering how close the pace is all throughout the field.
I think so. Still, who do you think is going to win? Now, just hazard a guess.
Yeah. Gee, I don't know. I mean, Redshaw's not Redshaw. You know, passing him's never been easy. He certainly knows how to defend for position. And obviously now he's had a race. Let's forget the lovely Rfactor announcer man, or it's never Rfactor without the announcer man, I swear. But
No.
yeah, Lewis Redshaw, you know, he's, as we know, as I mentioned, plenty experienced in GPV, knows how it works around here, and he's you know, knows how to defend his position in any scenario. So he won't be easy to pass, but I just don't think he quite has the pace of the cars around him. So it's a tough one to call. I'm thinking Brewer. If he can just, you know, just avoid the instance. If he can just basically keep him consistent, keep it on track, I think he has every chance of fighting for that win. But yeah, I mean, really, any of the top 7 or even the top 10 really even have a shot of taking this win. So he's definitely a tough one to call.
Absolutely, and I personally am going to go with Jack Mayer, considering his recovery last time around and seemingly a fairly decent pace. But it's just a shot in the dark, realistically, because Daniel Brewer is going to be so fast, as we've seen last time around. And just generally, this looks like it's going to be a very interesting race as we go into the formation lap, and this time, hopefully no crashes off the line here. As we have Lewis Redshaw taking you from the pole from reverse grid, with second place starter from Bastian Paisler, third for Jack Mayer, fourth for Osvaldo Angelone, fifth for Daniel Brewer, sixth for Roy Schroten, seventh for a race 1 winner from Stefan Ruolt, 8th place for Matthew Marquard, 9th place for Yuri Kastor, 10th for Dowie Kacper, 11th for Josh Downward, 12th for Jared Batalla, 13th for Nirnyar Kumar, 14th for Patrick Kraus, 15th for Johan Lindberg, with 16th for Antonio Hreljanovic, who made it in just on the very last second. Gert de Vries in 17th, with 18th for Fabian Ruda, 19th for Adam Osgar, 20th for Maciej Winnek. Watch out for him. He would have been the race winner possibly if not for his disconnection. 21st from Mike Bell. 22nd will be an empty spot. Jean-Pierre Helpap has actually decided to start from the pits this time around, with 23rd for Michael Twomala, 24th for Mark Fuller, 25th for Mike Fint, and finally, the final of the race starters, Ben Zupanek in 26th, and we are missing one Patrick Gerber.
Unfortunately, yeah, he disconnected right as we went to the session, so unfortunately he won't be able to take part in this race, which is a real shame, but yeah, unfortunately, again, such is the way that technical issues do tend to kind of work out. They always end up happening at the worst possible times. So yeah, drivers just about to finish their formation lap. Redshaw will lead them off in that very striking drag machine. Again, big shout out to all the cars really on the grids in FC, SC and SL, with some very pretty cars all throughout the field. I'm sure World GT will have the same once again, and yeah, it always makes it even more exciting. We've got such a colourful and vibrant grid on show as well. So it's about to go green, and hopefully be a bit more of a standard start now that we don't have water covering half the tracks. So yeah, looks like going to be a juicy sprint race here to finish off round 1 of Supercup action here at GPVWC, and yeah, let's bring this one on.
I think you're very much right, and I think this is going to be fascinating to see. Hopefully this time, again, a clean start. The track is dry this time around, at least on the grid spots, and seemingly around most of it. So hopefully we're going to see a bit more clean of a race and first couple corners and an entire first lap. But the drivers are just about lined up as we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 red lights, and here we go. A great start from Lewis Redshaw. However, Bastian Paisler has actually slept up a little bit, and he's slipping behind. Who's now? Oh no, he's not. He's
crashed by the back
for the first corner. However,
big crash. Oh my
Kumar,
goodness.
Patrick Kraus. Who else is in
Roy
here? Roy Schroten.
Yeah, and then that's I think where it started. I was just watching in the background. Oh, and there's a big hit further back as well. Oh my goodness me.
Oh wow, Helpap is flying for the world. What is going on? He has actually flown about 15 meters up in the air. This is ridiculous.
Wow.
Okay, so we have had a bit of a mess beyond about the 6th or 7th place. Our current top 5 is dealing quite okay. Lewis Redshaw is leading the race, and he is having a little bit of a train of a car, including Osvaldo Angelone at the very back of it, who's now dropped back and is going to be under pressure from Stefan Ruolt. However, this was absolutely a mess at the start.
Oh, no. Oh, and speak of the battle for P9. Oh, my goodness me. It was Darry Tapper, Adam Osgar, and Mike Quint going 3 wide down the straight towards the S's. They managed to make it work somehow, so kudos to them on that. But look at this. They're all trying to scrap for positions. I think it's Mechik Mlinik behind them as well. Oh, no. Quint, big snap. Wow.
Hinss, Hreljanovic right on the side, completely without fault from Hreljanovic. Very unlucky. It was again something very similar which we've seen from Mike Bell in the previous race, which ended his race effectively. So this is very unlucky for Antonio after a little bit of a battle going on. So the track conditions are still tricky as Roy Schroten and a massive drivers are now pitting in for damage.
Yeah, it's been, again, a real shame to see this instance once again off the start, and I really hope, well, not just for my own sake, but for the entire Super League field, that we don't see that in a Super League race tomorrow. Obviously, being the, you know, the feature-length race series that it is. Hopefully, it'll be some patience for Amy Supreme. Tomorrow's, Adam Osger getting passed around the outside by Supanic, really close. And now Mikel Tumala looking at the inside as well. Osger getting swamped in his open laps. I think he gained a lot of positions by avoiding the lap 1 carnage. His pace is not the greatest from what I could tell in that first race, and he's starting to be swamped by the rest of the field. But either way, it is still Lewis Redshaw leading the way, but Jack Mayer is on a mission and a half. He got by Bastian Patella. Oh, sorry, other way around. That is right. Sorry, Bastian Baszler. There you go. On the last lap down the main straight, got a lovely move done down that main straight. And again, it looks like he's got that car pretty well trimmed for straight line speed. So I won't be too surprised if he lines up Redshaw here in the T1, looking really strong already in these opening stages. He's showing some great pace.
Bastian Baszler is also falling back down into the grasp of Osvaldo Angelone, who is now being heavily basically pressured by Stefan Ruold, who's also having to deal with Yuri Kacper possibly closing by. However, Stefan Ruold...
Oh, Mayer in the wall! Mayer in the wall!
Lewis Redshaw and Jack Mayer both in the wall. Mayer without a front wing. I think Redshaw without too much damage. However, he has lost out a lot of places. And now Bastian Baszler is up in the front, in the lead, and now having to defend from 2 drivers who are completely engulfed in the battle between Osvaldo Angelone and Stefan Ruold. This is a 3-way scrap for the lead currently. And Yuri Kastrup is right on the very back of that little group as well.
Yeah, and that's going to be, I think there'll be one, that's going to be one the stewards are going to have a lot of fun with, I suspect, because looks like Redshaw's gone off at T1, gone to rejoin, and I think Mayer maybe a little oblivious to what's going on, just going to come across as per normal. And unfortunately, Redshaw's come back on, and that's where the contact has happened. So not really sure who would be to blame on that one. I'll leave that to the DC to decide. But either way, it's unfortunately robbed us of a battle for the leaders. Oh boy, someone off in the background. Darry Tapper, big spin out of the S's as well. Man, oh man, we're in the dry, and you'd almost think we're still in the wet with the way some of these accidents are going on. But either way, yeah, Jack Mayer, sorry for sorrows after that one, but he will at least be able to get in and pit and continue. And I mean, with the way these incidents keep happening, if he can just keep it clean out of the pit lane, he might have a chance of still getting points. But what this has now meant is Bastian Baszler now leads this one from Osvaldo Angelone, and then you've got Stefan Ruold and Yuri Gastorp in behind. So, oh wow, everyone using all sorts of road through turn 1, some really interesting lines at play. But so yeah, 4-way scrap on for the lead, and it's Baszler leading for now. Everyone on the soft compound tyre, so the medium, or the harder, compound tyre compared to super softs. And yeah, looks like being a really juicy battle for the lead. You've got Redshaw 5th, Downard 6th. Malenik obviously recovering from starting at the back for this race, is already up to 7th. And you've got Daniel Brewer in 8th, Brent Supanic in 9th, and Mikel Tumala rounds out your top 10.
Yes, it looks like a very strong start of the race from Team Winnick, just avoiding all of the mess that has been created by all the drivers around him, and somehow getting up to 7th place, starting from pretty much the very back of, well, not the very back, but around the 20th or 19th spot. And this is going to be interesting, as we have Mike Fint, who's DNF'd. I think we just had, what have we had? Oh, just a spin and straight into the wall. I think he just decided to call it.
Yeah, fair enough. I think he had an incident earlier on as well, from what I saw, so probably a bit of a frustrating run for him, which is a big shame. But either way, his teammate, Angelone, looking strong in the top 3. So Cosmo still on for some really strong points here if Angelone can hold on. As, look at how much road every single one of them are using. They really aren't leaving anything on the table right now. But got some interesting battles further back as well. Got another bit of a queue forming behind Josh Downard in P6, going defensive on Maciek Mlinek, which is an interesting call. We know Mlinek's got a lot of pace, so I don't know if defending it's going to do too much. It looks like he has realised that Mlinek a bit faster on raw pace and has let him have it into T1, and that has now left him vulnerable to Daniel Brewer, another faster car, recovering after instance early on. Downard going to defend the inside line, and Brewer, no! And round he goes. Well, yeah, there you go. So I'll tell you what, the DC is going to have some long work ahead of them, I think, after this one.
Well, aren't you glad you're not a part of it anymore?
Well, I am actually. So.
Oh, okay, you are. Never mind.
Yeah, I might end up having to look at it myself. We'll see. But,
Oh dear, you're gonna
yeah,
have a lot of fun. Well, thankfully now you're spotting some as we go along. As we have had Real overtakes Osvaldo, as Osvaldo just about hits the grass and somehow saves it from hitting the wall. However, he is now out of the contention and is going to be under attack from Lewis Redshaw, who is still running there in behind. He's now in 4th place. If he can overtake Osvaldo into this corner, not at all. Okay, Osvaldo is going to be under heavy attacks, and this is going to slow those 2 drivers down. And what this is going to mean is Martin Winnick, who's already there, less than a second away, I think, is going to have a field day. And he'll be hoping to get up to 4th at this point.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like Redshaw obviously still recovering, as is Mlinick. So Mlinick already looking on for top 5, and that lens there with Angeloni really going to help him out there. Bensi Panic actually coming through quite strongly in that GSR car, obviously a lot more comfortable in the dry conditions, it would seem. So he, is looking pretty juicy to have a say in that battle too, and he's dragging Daniel Brewer along with him. Miguel Tumala's not too far back either. And again, looking a bit more comfortable in the dry weather conditions, so he might be one to watch also. And then Downard's now dropped down to 11th spot, but is still, 10th spot, but is still looking on strong in that 10th spot in the points, as we've got, I think, Derek Tapper in the pits and retiring with damage. So there you go, so another retirement to add to the list. But in all of this, Sebastian Paisler still leads, and now Yuri Gastorp is in P2, so I think I know a certain Matthew Ellington who's going to be chomping at the bit right now. So Yuri Gastorp's looking really strong, and looking strong to maybe even battle for the lead as this race goes on, as we are already closing in on the 3rd race distance.
Indeed, it's I don't know how Yuri actually got past. There must have been some kind of a contact or something between Stefan and Osvaldo that actually meant that they dropped back, because Yuri was behind them a few laps ago. So it must be, and Yuri is now closing down on Bastion, and now this looks like it could possibly be an attack opportunity. He's very close, and possibly in the 2nd DRS zone, he's gonna be having close enough to actually overtake Bastion. He is very close, and I think he is going to go for an opportunity. Going to the outside of the next corner, is he going to try it? He is going to try on the outside. He has the pace. It's going to be breaking point. He's going to try and break. They break around the same point. And he nearly touched. He goes on the outside, and somehow he manages to turn around and go in front. Yuri Gastorp is currently leading the 2nd round, or the 2nd part of this round.
Yeah, that was a really good move. We hung around the outside, and you saw Paisler really tried to squeeze in there. Squeezed in for all his worth, but credit to Paisler, just gave him enough room that Gastorp could still make that move cleanly. So great bit of racing there from those two. And now look at this. Here's Stephen Ruolt wants a piece of that Paisler pie as well, trying to get himself into P2. So Paisler looking like he doesn't quite have the pace of the opponents around him, and just sort of struggling now. As look at Ruolt really harassing the back of that car. I will not be surprised if he has a move very soon, but Gastorp getting a bit loose on the curbing. That's all they need, and we saw how quick Ruolt's pace was in the first race, so this is still not a shoe-in for Yuri Gastorp, and this battle will keep going on. I'm short of the flag, and again, you've got to remember you've got the likes of Angeloni, Mlinick and Redshaw, and even Bensi Panic and Brewer coming pretty quickly
I'm
further
hearing
back.
some sounds of Rfactor cars crashing or some parts coming off. Who had a bit of an off?
Oh, it looks like Josh Downard.
Yes.
Yeah. Looks like it's in the S's. Yeah, oh, wow. Okay, yeah, he's hit the curbing. Oh, the car's gone up on a little bit of in the air and just put him straight in the fence. So a bit of a weird moment there. But yeah, big shame for him, as that's going to now mean repairs and probably going to drop out of the points.
Yes, and to be honest, it seems like repairs in this series is in the 2nd race of Supercup usually means that your race is pretty much over.
Yeah, definitely, and yeah, as you say, being the sprint race, it's pit stop does effectively mean that. But I mean, at the moment, the rate it's going, I mean, with the amount of incidents that are happening, I mean, Jack Mayer's going to be in the points now, thanks to the instance. If you can just kind of get through and not have many issues, you're on for a good spot. I mean, the guys like Adam Osgood, who've seen has been struggling pace-wise, but he's still sitting 14th and on for points right now. And same with Gerrit de Vries and a couple of guys further back. So it's thanks to a bit of a chaotic kind of sprint race here. If you just survive, you're looking pretty strong. But you can see Magic Mlinick already on Stefan Ruolt. I'm guessing he's had an incident because he, remember, was right behind Paisler earlier on. So I'm guessing he's had an incident. So he's now down to 4th. That now puts Angeloni 3rd. and now gives Gastorp a good couple of seconds on Paisler. So a couple of moments from all the cars here at the top end is just shaking up the order. Now Redshaw suddenly dropped to 8th as well. So we're getting all sorts of shuffling going on here with cars having instance. It's a bit hard to follow, but we're doing the best we can. But either way, Gastorp still leading from Paisler. Now Angeloni 3rd, and you've got the Brasilia duo in P4 and 5. Ben Supanic looking much more comfortable in the dry in P6, and then you've got Brewer and Redshaw trying to recover in P7 and 8, and then Tumala in 9th, and now Mike Bell holding on for the final top 10 spot for Cosmo.
Now here's the question. Is there going to be any kind of team orders between Matthew Winnick and Stefan Ruolt, or are they going to fight it out on the track? And the question is if Matthew is actually faster than Stefan. It's going to be very, very interesting because, again, it's only the beginning of the championship, so I don't expect too much. But they will definitely not be fighting as hard as fighting somebody outside of their team, since they will be trying to get as many points after, especially what happened in race 1. However, Yuri Kastrup is actually putting up a pretty good pace, and he has 2.5 seconds on Bastian Paisler already, who is now less than 2 seconds in front of Osvaldo Angelone. So this could be an interesting little battle for second place if Osvaldo could actually find a little bit of pace.
Yeah, definitely. It's looking really strong, battle at the front. But yeah, Osvaldo looking very strong in 3rd, but not really gaining too much on at least the leader. He is gaining on Paisler, but looks like Gastorp's in a really, really nice sort of groove out there in the lead. Just chipping away and doing some really nice times. That's all he needs to do. He doesn't need to do anything too crazy. Just be consistent and do decent times, and he should hold on to the lead here till the end. Because you've got to remember, as I mentioned, all these cars further back coming through as well. They're all going to kind of cluster together and start battling. That's only going to help Gastorp in the lead. We'll see what times they do now. It looks like he's gained about another 10th on Paisler behind him, and you can see Angeloni, Ruolt, and Mlinic all kind of looming in the background. So it's all sort of closing up in the top 10, and Brewer and Supanic and Rich are all pretty close as well. And again, Tumala's just kind of lingering in the background as well. So we've got some really nice battles there. And we've got a good battle here for P10 between Bell and Rudel as well. And then a good battle with De Vries and Antonio behind them. Antonio's going to actually have a look into T1 for P12. And it looks like he will make that move.
Or no, sorry. Yeah, he was out for a while. I just seen that his he has just left the server. Sorry.
Yeah, indeed, no, all good. And yeah, just seeing, Antonio making that move for P12. So it's another spot for the Drake outfit, and currently looking pretty strong this race. 12th and 8th at the moment. So maybe not 2 top 5s, for example, which is what Brazilia's on to have at this phase of the race. But still, double points, good strong points to take for Drake. But yeah, this battle for P2 looking really juicy right now. Gastorp's just creeping away in the lead, but this battle for P2 could start to kick off very soon. It looks like Paisler just not quite able to match the pace of the guys around him.
No, it very much looks like Osvaldo is having a quite good pace. However, he's also being pressured by 2 Basilea drivers now. So this is going to be very, very interesting. A 4-way scrap for the second place. And to be honest, I feel like if Ruolt or Mlinic could get past these 2 drivers, I feel like they still have a chance of possibly catching up to Yuri.
Yeah, definitely. It's if they can clear Paisler quick enough, they do have the time to catch him. I mean, you can see Gastorp's just creeping away, but he's not getting away at a ridiculous rate of knots. He's just kind of slowly getting a 10th or 2, every sort of sector or 2, and just creeping away. But if the likes of, especially Ruolt and Mlinic, if they can clear the cars ahead of them quickly enough, they might be able to still close in and get to Gastorp. So it's all going to depend on how quickly they clear these cars, and if Gastorp can kind of keep this pace going and just keep banging in the laps to the end, which is looking pretty good at doing. He looks like he's in a very good zone in that car, and he knows what's on the table. He knows this is for a race win, which I know Matthew Arlington will be having everything crossed right now to get a win there for that YTF1 outfit. Certainly very much deserved as well if he can hold on. But still it's a good chunk of this race to go. But it helps him at the moment that behind him there's kind of a bit of a mobile roadblock in the form of Bastian Paisler, who at the moment is working in his favour, and that's really helping out Gastorp's bid for this race win. But obviously still plenty of time to go, and a lot of time for things to change.
Yes, still I think something like 8 laps to go or thereabouts after we cross the line this time around. And then we have, and at the moment it just seems like maybe they're not as quite able to overtake Angelone just on the basis that he also has DRS from Peisler. And of course, that will make it a far more difficult of a job to overtake somebody. And it seems like Angelone just doesn't quite have the speed to overtake Peisler on the straights. So it's a very interesting way that this battle is shaping up. However, Angelone goes for a look, but he doesn't quite decide to go for it. And Ruold nearly drives into the back of him as Angelone tries to make the corner from a slightly disadvantageous line after having the look.
Yeah, definitely. Had a little bit of a half look there. Wasn't quite close enough to make the move stick. Sitting in, just going to have to sit in P3 for now. But so yeah, Peisler not just looking a bit vulnerable at the moment. Just doesn't quite have the pace of the cars behind. You can see behind them, Daniel Brewer's just kind of looming bit by bit. He's been chipping away in P6 at this battle ahead of him, and the rate they're going, he may well actually catch that falling into the race. So this could turn into a 5-car battle very soon. You can see the Brazilian cars. Yeah, looks like they're going to switch, are they? Let's have a look. Or they are battling away. No, it looks like Ruolt's going to let him have it. So I think Mlinic will give him the cue that he's a little bit quicker in raw pace, and Ruolt just letting him have it there and see if he can maybe do anything about the 2 cars out of.
Jack Mayer is out of the running, by the way. He has just DNF'd. What happened there? It looks like it must have been some kind of an incident, considering he is not even disconnected from the server yet. Yes, he just spun it in one of the corners and decided to park it.
Big shame there, big shame, because he obviously had a real strong race one and looked good here for this second race, but just didn't quite end up working out. It's interesting to note that our attrition rate's actually getting similar to race one, despite it being just over half the length. But you always do find this with these races, because this is a shorter race, the red mist really does be a bit more prevalent. You know, the drivers, the aggression comes out, the elbows come out there like it's a sprint race. We've got to really, you know, get a bit more aggressive with our moves, and that's why we sort of end up seeing a pretty high attrition rate in these, what it should be, shorter races for Supercup.
Yep. Also, another fact is you're not actually prepared. This is not technically a qualifying session as well, like the first race is. So they don't have to worry about if they don't finish, well, they don't get the points, but that's it. In the first race, if they don't finish and they don't get a good position, they're going to be disadvantaged in the second race, which is shorter and, as we see, a little bit more elbows out. So it's kind of a twofold. There are multiple factors for it. But Martin Winnick is going for possibly for a move on Osvaldo. Not quite, having a look. But Osvaldo now is so very close to Peisler, and it just looks like those two. It looks like a spring kind of a move. He's just going between the two drivers, being either very close to one or the other.
Yeah, definitely. It's looking very juicy battle for the podium, and yeah, look at that Mlinic's pace, really strong right now. Again, Gastorp in all of this is just cruising away at about 5.5 seconds now in the lead. So this is all great news for him, and you can see Daniel Brewer's really looming large at the back of his pack. Oh, Baszler, yeah, off. And oh no, here we go. This is going to make it a bit awkward between these two. You can see Angelone makes it around the outside. Mlinic's going to follow him through. I think they're both going to get him. Or Paisley's going to stick the nose in. Oh, there's contact. Oh no. And Mlinic is going to lose out to his teammate, possibly not quite Daniel Brewer as well. So a bit of an awkward moment. But I tell you what, that could have gone a lot worse.
It could have, and he'll be very lucky that Brewer didn't go for any stupid move as well. He decided to take it very, very safe and not go for an all-out move. Am I hearing a little bit of rain, or is that just me hearing things?
I think you might be imagining it at the moment.
Might be, yeah. Or it might be just the camera placement or something.
Yeah. But yeah, very interesting moment there in that battle at the top of the field. As I said, it could have been a lot worse there. We've seen that sort of scenario before end a lot worse off than that one did. So, you know, credit to all the drivers there managing to make that work. But what that has now done, of course, is now Angelone inherits second spot. So it's a big +1 for him. And now Paisley is going to be a further roadblock for Ruolt, Mlinic, and Daniel Brewer. And again, not far behind them. Ben Supanic is not far behind and sort of closing bit by bit. But one thing we'll have to keep in mind is, again, the drivers really are using all the track and some. As looks like Mlinic's once again trying to hit by his teammate. Looks like he's not going to this time, so looks like he's going to let Ruolt have a go for a while, although Ruolt does run wide at T1, so I guess that kind of puts that one to bed. I think Mlinic will probably go by here. Let's have a look here down to the turn 2. No, he's looking, but not quite. They've got to watch out here because Daniel Brewer's looking in the back at both of them, so he might get in the way of their little team fight. But one thing to bear in mind as well, and one thing I have been noticing, the drivers, especially in the races, getting pretty adventurous with the track limits, and it has been stated by the DC they are going to be keeping a pretty close eye on that, even in races, with the white lines. So there may be some post-race stuff to do with that, because I've been seeing some drivers being pretty liberal with the track limits. We'll see, but just something to bear in mind there.
Something very interesting is I've seen a lot of drivers being very liberal with the track limits in the S's as well. That's one place I've noticed it a lot in as well. Because some drivers taking it quite... Okay, Daniel Brewer just went a bit... that's track limits there for you, right? Just cutting across the S's completely across the grass. Losing time, of course, so nothing wrong. Well, that's more him losing than gaining through that little cut, you could say. However, at the moment, it looks like Osvaldo is actually slower than Kastorp. And it nearly looks like Paisler is slower than Angelone, which means that possibly Angelone is just going to have this second place set for himself if he can just keep it there. Because it very much still looks like nobody can get for Paisler.
Yeah, definitely. Paisler's being very difficult to deal with in overtakes, and he's certainly making it easy for everyone to get around him. So he's holding on in third at the moment. This is for a podium, of course, as well. So he will be, I'm sure, fighting tooth and nail for it. But I mean, we've seen the pace that Malik and Brault have, and even Brewer for that matter as well. So it's going to be pretty tough for him to keep them behind. But we are closing in on the last few laps of this race. So time is running out for the Brasilia duo to move on to the podium. But yeah, we'll see how this pans out. It's already been a pretty interesting battle, and it's something you get more desperate and close as we get close to the end of this race. So we'll definitely keep an eye on that one. I'm just watching further back. Josh Downard's going to make a move on Adam Oscar. Wow, that was a bit of an interesting moment. Oscar going to rejoin. Oh, a bit interesting. Okay, he's going to lose another spot to Patella as well. So some interesting moments further down the field. We have a nice little battle as well for P10 between Antonio Rude and Mike Bell. That's for the last place in the top 10. Bell holding on for dear life in that Cosmo car, and it'd be good for him if he can hold on. They're on for a really strong points haul here, Cosmo, in the second race, so I think that's being a nice little motivation for him for holding on at the moment. But the battle for P3 continues. Here come Rolt. We have to go at Paisler down at T1 maybe.
To be honest, I think Cosmo is doing quite well for itself. This double round, as we have Rolt trying to
no!
as he crashes loses his front wing, and this is a disaster for Scuderia Basilea. I don't think Winnick quite realizes that he doesn't have the front wing yet. Is this... Please don't be a massive crash! No, he quite... Oh, gosh. I think he realized that. Although, is this just a graphical bug? Because he's still going fairly quickly. No. Because he's still going quite quickly, and looks like he doesn't have the front wing for me. But no, I think he does not have the front wing. As Daniel Brewer is on the back of him, and I think he's going to overtake him. And Machin Winnick, what an unlucky victim in this incident of his teammate of all things.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, there's gonna be some words shared, I think, after the race. That was some interesting driving, is how I'll put it. I'll leave it at that after that incident. But yeah, and DC is gonna have as I mentioned, and yeah, Brewer through as well now. And now I'm thinking of Reynolds. Rolt's gonna contact between Mlinick and Paisler. It's all boiling over here on track, and this is really not how you do it. Between the drivers, just got to calm down, guys. I think it's getting a bit too red misty here. I know it's only the first race of the season, but we've just got to calm down, guys. It's getting a bit ridiculous at this phase of the race, some of these incidents. But anyway, DC, I'm sure will do their work and hopefully hand out some, hand out some appropriate penalties to maybe rein in some of what we've seen in these couple of races. But Mlinick has been able to limp around, and we'll get into the pit lane, and we'll drop back. He is still, as I mentioned, he's still going to probably get maybe even a top 10 very nearly out of this, despite that incident where he's actually 10th. 10th's Mike Bell. And yeah, he's still probably going to get a top 10 out of this despite all that. So showing, how these incidents have shaped the field.
Zupanek fighting Bastian Paisler and going wide in the first corner, going completely sideways. Really lucky not to spin it either. And it just looks like a fairly decent fight there. Bastian, of course, I think what Bastian was doing was he was trying to let Mate go by because he felt responsible for the incident that occurred. I don't know. That's what it looked like to me because his face is back up to normal.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like it's one of those moments. But I mean, in all of this, Yuri Gastorp looking pretty juicy to take the win at the moment. He's about to come over for the final lap next time by. And I mean, despite all of the incidents, he's just shown how it's done, I think, really. Him and Osvaldo have probably been the two picks for me. I mean, everybody else has been getting the elbows out. It's getting a bit messy, really, further back. But Osvaldo and Yuri, they kept their noses clean, kept it nice and consistent, kept out of trouble. And, look where they are. It's amazing how that works when you drive nice and, you keep yourself out of trouble, keep it nice and clean, nice and straight, and you end up in the high spots. So looking pretty good to bring home the goods here. And I think we're going to have a very happy Mr. Allington in the chat at the moment if Yuri Gastorp can hold on, which is looking like what he's going to do. Been a really strong race from Yuri, I've got to say. Really impressive, really. I mean, he benefited from early incidents on those opening laps, but his pace has been very impressive all race long. And if this isn't a bit of a sign of something to watch over the season, then I'm not really sure what is. So yeah, big rap to Euro for this one. Been a really strong race from him, and big kudos to Osvaldo as well, being pretty in the center of all the battling earlier on, and being able to get through with a clean nose is a really strong drive from him.
I think honestly, Matthew Winnick didn't do too much wrong himself. It was he was mostly collected in that incident, from what I've seen. But yes, you're definitely right about Yuri and Osvaldo keeping their noses clean for most of the race. As I say that, Angelone just goes a bit wide. Of course he does. Surprisingly enough, he's a little bit quicker than Castor, but I think what's happening with Castor is he's just taking it easy, and considering it is the final lap, there's no point of pushing it and then crashing on the final lap, because at this point he is going for the very final sector of the final lap of this round of Super Cup. This is a fantastic drive from Yuri Kastorp, an absolutely stellar performance after what was quite a messy start, and starting off quite far back, I think, compared to a lot of the other drivers. And as he crosses the line, here's our second winner of the season in 2 races here in Melbourne. Fantastic showing from himself. And Osvaldo Angelone in second place, with Daniel Brewer, after quite a few problematic moments himself, came in third. For fourth place is Bastian Peisler. Fifth for Ben Zupanek, a driver who just came back to Super Cup from Super League, and Stefan Ruold in sixth place. Seventh for Lewis Redshaw, and Martin Winnick, after an unlucky incident with his teammate, comes in eighth. Mikhail Tuomala is coming in ninth, with Mike Bell will be very happy with that Cosmo, putting it back into 10th place after a nightmare of the first race. And Fabian Rude, Antonio Hruljanovic, Roy Schroten, Jared Batale, and Josh Downard seemingly closing the top 15 runners for the points finished.
Yeah, indeed. And then after that, you'll have Adam Osger in 16th, Matthew Marquardt in 17th, Jean-Pierre Helpup in 18th, and rounding out your finishes is Patrick Rouse in classified 20th. And in the end, you're going to have pretty much the same amount of retirements as the first race. And again, that just kind of shows how it does tend to end up going with these sprint races. But again, massive kudos to Yuri on the win there. And obviously Osvaldo and Daniel rounding at the podium. But yeah, hopefully, we'll see a bit of an evolution of that for rounds to come. And as I mentioned, I suspect the DC is going to be busy at work, and yeah, might be some reality checks coming in for drivers coming to the next one is my feeling. But again, leave it to DC, not for me to mention here. But either way, had some great racing. Had some great racing throughout both races. We had some awesome side by side moments, and some really, really great drives all throughout the field. So really got very exciting and very enjoyable night of racing, and yeah, looking forward to rounds to come.
I think honestly, well, considering I'm not in a DC, I can definitely say something else as well. Well, hopefully the drivers will learn how to use the brake bias on their cars by the looks of it, because it looks like a lot of drivers cannot handle these cars with the brake bias that they're running. And of course, maybe you can handle the car for 18 of the 19 laps without having a slip up, but you have to do it for 19 of 19 laps. And if you ruin somebody else's race, that is just not fair just because you're running a brake bias and you just can't control the car. It's simple as that. I think drivers will have to do a bit of work on that front. However, I think there was a lot of great running, as you said, a good bit of battling, and some drivers keeping their nose clean. And as we see, keeping your nose clean in this race was paramount to getting a good result. Drivers like Daniel Brewer made a few small mistakes, but never ended up having a major mistake in the second race, which meant that he was able to get the podium. And there are, of course, then victims of others people's mistakes, like Matthew Winnick, who was there fighting for possible podium, but ended up having a bit of an unlucky end with only 8th place. And, of course, the first lap incident, which a lot of drivers probably lost a lot of time in and possibly had to pit in and lost out on the possibility of higher point scoring places. But in the end, I think that was a pretty interesting race, especially once it got going.
Yeah, definitely. It's certainly, you know, as I said, got some great racing throughout. You know, had its moments here and there, but I mean, it's the first race of the season. And it is Melbourne as well. You know, it's a difficult track to overtake, and that can lead to a bit of an increase in aggression, and that does end up showing a bit sometimes in the racing as well, which is, you know, I think partly you know, a nature of the track. So yeah. But yeah, no, I think overall it was a good night of racing, and I guess seeing as he's here. And apparently Matt sent him, which you know, I completely understand, seeing as, you know, win for YTF1. I'll drag him in now. We'll have a little bit of a chat with old Yuri Gastorp. Yuri, tell you what, that was a ultra impressive race too. You know, managed to keep clear of the trouble, get a nice clean start. I mean, how was it from your end though?
Yeah, it was a lot better than race 1. Race 1 was a bit rough, got damage at the start, and our setup wasn't really working for this for the wet race. And I couldn't get enough practice in as much as I wanted, and then race 2 it started clicking a bit better.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, how was that sort of race 1 dealing with the weather? Because obviously the start we saw, you know, made it a bit interesting with the wet. But I mean, how was it for you dealing with that as the race sort of evolved?
Yeah, I haven't had much time last couple of days, and then I got asked to drive in as a reserve driver tomorrow for Super League. So I've been driving since I got home today. I've been driving that, and then I just quickly jumped into the car, expecting it to be dry. Then it wasn't dry, and it was pretty embarrassing for me. That first race, I think I spun 3 times, hit the wall 2 times, like race to forget. And then top 7 was reverse grid, so I thought, oh shit, it's not gonna be my night. But I managed to avoid some incidents, and then got a good pass for lead and got a decent lead.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
Sorry for the language anyway, for anybody watching the broadcast. However, yeah, I'd like to congratulate you on your win anyway. And yes, the conditions in the first race seemed very, very tough from a lot of drivers' perspectives. So I don't think you were alone there, and it just seemed very, very treacherous indeed. And to be honest, congrats still. You managed it, and you managed to keep your nose clean in the second race, which seemed to nearly be more impressive sometimes. However, we also have a second race winner here with us, or the first race winner, in fact, Stefan Ruold. How was that race? And we've seen a bit of trouble in the second race from you.
Yeah, so first of all, the first race was pretty hectic. The start was a bit damp, and then I saw some people going off left and right, and I just tried to avoid them. I even went off track trying to avoid them. And I thought my teammate was going to win that one for sure, but then he had an unfortunate disconnection. So I just did my best to overtake P2 and 3 during the pit stop, and I did. So yeah, really happy with that one.
That's fantastic stuff, and yeah, it seemed like the conditions were very tricky. I can't, to be honest, recall too well. Have you started from the dry side or from the wet side of that race?
Yeah, from the wet side. So it was, you know, bad luck that I started on the wet side, but then again, I had such a bad start coming from the wet line. I was in P12 or something like that, and then the major crash happened in front of me, so I could just drive around it and gain like 6 places. So it was unlucky, but you know, in the end, maybe it saved me.
Yeah, no, Yeah, possibly. Was there any thought going through your head of maybe starting on inter tires, or was it definite that you're going to start on slicks?
No, I even did qualify on slicks. When you're on the dry line, it was a tire to be on.
Oh, so that's great. And second race, we've a bit unlucky. I don't know if you've seen what happened exactly in or were you involved in any of that incident at the very start in turn 1?
No, it happened just in front of me, and I saw someone spinning, and then he actually ran into the side of the one. I don't know. I think it was Roy, on the right side of me, and I could just about drive around that incident.
All right. Well, well done. It seems like your team is going very strong, and a bit of an unlucky finish in the end in the second race for both of you. But it looks like you and Maciej will be very, very fast this season if these races are going. If these races are anything to go by. Tom?
Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, thanks for coming in, Stefan. And again, well done on your efforts tonight, and see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
No worries. So, I think we might just have one more. I know we've got a couple sitting in there for the interviews, but I think we might have just one more interview before we wrap up, so not going on too long. So I'll drag in the one I'm thinking. I'm probably going to get in mid-conversation, I bet you, so apologies in advance for doing this.
True that I often...
There we go. Yeah, we did so. Apologies again, Jack, for doing that. And you might drag him in conversation. Apologies on that. But thought I'd drag you in for being our last interview for this one. So before we wrap up, obviously you had the awesome race one. Starting from the pit lane and managed to get to 5th spot. I mean, how was that from your view? Being especially those opening laps being pretty chaotic from what we were saying.
Oh, completely unexpected. I mean, as my first proper Supercup race, I was only looking at the bottom of the points. I mean, the setup was completely made by me and my mate Josh. And besides that, we haven't given it to any decent driver, established driver in the league to try. So we're not sure if it's a good setup or a bad setup. And originally I was going to start from the back of the grids because I had a back of grid penalty from last season. But I had to brake park Ferme because clever old me decided to do qualifying on one brake ducts and one engine radiator, so that wasn't even going to last me half the race, so had to take a sacrifice and start from the pit lane, and it actually got me out of a lot of trouble at the start, so yeah,
for sure. And how was it seeing the track evolve, and did it seem to suit the setup pretty well?
The setup surprisingly as well worked very well for the changing conditions. I mean, it's not like you practice for these sort of conditions. You practice on a evolving circuit straight from green. You don't practice on a circuit where only the racing line is the only fast part. As the race progresses, the whole circuit slowly becomes quick. But early on, when you're trying to make the moves, especially when the whole grid is bunched together, it's so difficult to overtake when you're fighting through the field because you get to the inside line, and so suddenly your braking zone has been lengthened massively just by a little bit of a damp circuit. So definitely made the racing difficult.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, race 2, you were looking strong, and then had an incident that dropped you back. But again, pace was very strong, which is a great positive take from it. Looking forward to the next rounds. You think you can keep plugging away, and maybe keep this going for a longer term, maybe.
I mean, I'd love to, but like I say, it's only one race. Well, for me, one lap race and 3 laps. But I'd ideally like to stay in like top 6 throughout the year racing, especially without the instance. Add the instance in, maybe as in the through podiums.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be awesome. Yeah, and signs of today. I think I can't see why you don't have why there isn't a good chance. But again, thanks for popping in, Jack, and again, well done on your results tonight, and a lot of positives to take from it towards the next rounds.
Yeah, fine. Thank you.
No worries at all. Back you to the interview scene, chat to Josh and Co. There we go. So yeah, big thanks to the interviews for coming in, and I'll tell you what, that was well, as you said, Kacper, I mean, it had it all, really, didn't it? We always say that every broadcast, but I mean, this one quite literally did have it all. So, so we're really not lying when we say it this time.
Yeah, I think honestly, it was a lot of the racing was fantastic, and I think that a lot of the race winners and the podiums generally did end up deserving it, and I think that it ended up being a nearly a good story. Of course, a lot of the drivers, like Jack Mayer, of course, having a bit of a bad luck there in the second race. However, the first race went so much better. And it was an up and down race for a lot of the drivers, but I think in the end, a couple drivers which we'll be remembering as a very fond race is Osvaldo and probably Brewer in the end, even though he had some issues in the race one. To be honest, they're finishing pretty well. However, yes, I think that the races are exciting, but I do hope that the racecraft at the start is going to be going to be better from next race on.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's gonna be a really fascinating year, of course, because you know, you've got the whole thing with the tires being a bit more consistent, so you can have a lot more strategy and play there in both the the feature race and the sprint race. We did actually see, I noticed a bit further down the field, we did see some drivers on the super soft making him last the race. So they're going to have that strategy playing out. Obviously, the just adjusting to the cars is going to be another factor that all the drivers are going to be having to deal with as well. So yeah, it's going to be a much more unpredictable season. Certainly, if time's anything to go by, and it's. I mean, the main thing that will be interesting is obviously the different tracks. So Melbourne, I think Melbourne as well kind of does maybe amplify things a bit, because it is obviously a pretty unforgiving track, pretty tight as well, always tough to overtake, which is why we maybe see a bit more aggression in overtaking than we would in other circuits. So I don't think it's gonna, some of the things tonight are going to be a sign of the season to come, but the drivers will keep adjusting. They'll get a bit, get more adapted with the car, get more comfortable as the rounds goes on, and obviously it's something that makes better racing. So yeah, very, very keen to roll on the rest of the season, and I'm sure by the looks of it, it's going to be a really close fight, not just for the Championship League, but all throughout the field.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's going to be a fascinating season, and I don't think by the looks of it, we may not even get somebody running away like last season with it. Hopefully, anyway. I do enjoy myself some good championship battles in open wheeler series, or any series really, in terms of racing. But I think, to be honest, that's the time for us to wrap up and promote some of our stuff. Well, of course, this season, GPVWC coverage of the career ladder is brought to you by simnews.tv. And if you wish to, please head over to simnews.tv. Right after we finish this broadcast, we will be having the Scrutineer Live by Mike Pittman telling us about the intricacies in Super League that's happening tomorrow, and the development, etc., for the season and the cars. And that will be streaming live in a moment on here. And I think, and tomorrow, of course, you can join in at the exact same time as we were on to see another simnews.tv broadcast of GPVWC Super League. So the premiere series of this league, and I think it's going to be very exciting, and I wish that you all join in. And from me, Kacper Kolodziejczyk, Thomas Hinss, and Argo Teder as our cameraman, I wish you all a good night, and hopefully see you soon.